Welcome
Sure.
to the 120th meeting of the Human Rights Commission.
Wow.
Well, I don't know, I'm just making that
You're
up.
older than me.
Could be something like that. March meeting, March 2015 meeting of the Portland Human Rights Commission. I get really distracted by voices in my ear, sorry. Okay. Welcome, pseudo-public. If you have requests for us, we don't have our form with us today, but if you have a specific request, and maybe you can pass it on to anybody who's wondering back there when they come in. Please mark it on that sign-in sheet, just give an indication, and then Kenya will get in touch with you with the form pretty soon. And we will be having time for public comments later. Right now it's scheduled for 5:10, and we probably will stick pretty close to that tonight. Thanks for joining us. So I just wanted to do a round of introductions and include a little bit of a check-in. We have some time to do that. Just let us know how you're doing, anything important going on in your life you want to share, or any appreciations or thoughts. I'm Amy Samara. I am in my 3rd year as a commissioner. I'm currently the chair till April. And I'm enjoying the challenge of figuring out how to facilitate such dense public Robert's Rules of Order using meetings.
Can you say that 3 times?
Or down.
Want to go this way so we give Ashley a chance to,
Is it this one?
Yeah.
Is that what you said?
Yeah.
Oh, okay.
You're on, Shipley.
I wasn't paying your direction. Shivery Vickers, how long have we been here? I think when was it something? Was it July, August, November? 2014, so not quite a year yet.
Anything you want to share about your life, your work, your...
Busy.
Okay.
Busy's better than bored. Busy's better than bored. I'm just gonna say that. Yes. Go ahead.
Audrey Alberson, I'm in my 2nd month here with HRC. I'm enjoying figuring out how to navigate all of the systems and working with the housing rights issues. And I will second that busy is better than bored.
All right. I'm Alan Lazo. I've been a commissioner since 2010. I'm just glad to be here. And I'm just barely here in lots of different ways. But that should be good enough today.
I'm Diallo Bennett. I've been on the commission for 3 years as well. And I'm also really busy. I'm an undergraduate at PSU studying philosophy and communications. So that takes up time. But also, I'm glad to be here always. And a lot of my life is really starting to, I guess, show me why this work is so important. Dealing with my partner who's mentally ill right now and he's in the hospital, has been homeless, knowing like the prison system and how my dad is dealing with his life currently being out, and so yeah, I'm glad to be here.
I'm Suzanne, and this is my first official month. Yay! I am, it's been a really interesting learning curve, and I feel like the more I look around and see what's going on in Portland, the more I think that lens of human rights is a really important thing to talk about and have discussions about. It's kind of, there's so much going on, so it's challenging and a lot to learn. I'm glad to be here.
Good evening, I'm Soji Young. I've been on the commission for about a year and a half. Life for me is quite busy, so in my personal and professional life, human rights and diversity and inclusion are deeply rooted. So if I'm not here, I'm with you in the mission. So.
I'm Kia Budding, I've been stuck in the HRC for 9 months. And then spur it all out.
Yeah.
I'm very much here.
I'm Sam Sachs, been on the commission for 19 months. Wow, so where's the time go? Doing great, it's my birthday month. Can't believe I'm gonna be 35. It's a joke, you don't get it. And I testified in front of the city council last week, and then at the Board of Education, trying human rights stuff, so I'm not here. And me and Shabri were at the Reese Talks last night, so there's not one thing as another around this work, so it's keeps me busy as well. Marcia was there as well. Marcia and Shabri both facilitated in a wonderful way.
Well, I'm Marcia, and I'm also new. This is my second meeting, I think, officially. I have gone to a CPRC meeting and 2 of the race talks. And the first time I went was asked to facilitate, which with no prep really, but it was so engaging and such an opportunity to be being involved in these conversations that it was very easy to facilitate, and I enjoyed that. I guess in my personal life, it's next month is going to be Passover in Jewish, and that's a celebration of when Jews became free of being slaves, and it's always like kind of preparation, and family stuff, events, and we're getting the story together and everything, and thinking about that. So that's kind of on my mind tonight with my work.
And tonight is the first night of
Plural, yes,
another Jewish holiday.
yes.
We won't go back and dance for that. Another joke.
Esther, a woman freed the Jewish people one more time. Yeah, that's what we're celebrating.
Hello, Ashley Horn. Been on the commission 3 years or more. I actually haven't really kept track, I'm sorry. That's probably a good thing, so it doesn't feel like it's been too long. I've been focusing on international human rights with a specific focus on indigenous human rights for about 13 to 16 years. And in previous professional capacities did that work a lot. I now work for the city of Portland doing a lot of racial equity public engagement work. Happy to be here.
Okay, thanks, y'all. So let's move into approval of agenda and minutes. Let's go with the minutes first. If there's any changes to the minutes, you can go ahead and call a motion to those changes.
I see.
Was that
Was Sam here last month? You were here last
You
month.
were late.
always late, that's why I'm
Oh,
not on
so
here.
you don't get on the list if you're
Not
late?
on the
They're not
attendees.
even on the,
Yeah.
on the
Don't
limbo.
even exist, don't even exist on this
Sam,
document.
we're gonna add
And
you.
if you're not in trouble, I
Right, so, was it 18 months? So we get Ben to put my name on here somewhere,
Okay,
and an attendee.
okay.
And I don't know if this is a problem, but Malloy's first and last name are spelled wrong.
It's a nice creative way to spell his name. should suggest it to him. Okay, any other changes?
My name also has a name on it, just for any.
That's helpful.
Yeah.
La Grande. Okay, I move that we accept the minutes with the changes suggested by Diallo, Suzanne, and Sam. All those in favor? Did you get it, Kenya? Do you need all the votes? Okay. You just need the number. Okay, can we do that again, please?
All right.
3, 4, 5, 6. 6. Are there any abstentions? 2 abstentions. Hopefully my math comes out. For your help. Okay, let's take a look at the agenda. And this is, we call this a proposed agenda, and I take that literally. So this really is a time to look and see if is there anything you feel that is merits to be added or changed. One thing I need to add is Irene Konev is here. She wants 2 minutes, just 2 minutes, sooner than later. So I want to do that before the executive committee report.
I would like to add, I think probably the executive committee received letters from the Jewish Federation of Greater Portland over our involvement in an event happening on the 16th. I just want to have a discussion about that.
Okay. And the organization again is?
Jewish Federation of Greater Portland.
Within the executive committee report, okay.
Yep. Sorry.
That's okay. And just to kind of name a couple of things, Suzanne, are you ready to do a proposal for public participation? Okay, great.
I don't know if I can maybe add this to, I don't know where to add this, but I had a conversation with Daniel Franco and Nunez about immigration. It's a really big topic, and people go through stuff every day about it, so I want to just make a comment on it.
Can we
sometime.
do that, Dale, at the emerging issues
Yes.
near the very end? Okay.
Yeah.
Thanks. Any other changes, additions?
I would have to leave early, but I did want to make mention of my participation in the Women in Prison Conference. I'm not certain where that.
Okay.
As did Mayor Harris.
What time do you have to leave?
I need to leave at 5:15.
You want to do that right after Irene?
Yeah, that's great.
Okay. Okay, I move that the meeting agenda be endorsed as written as with the amendment suggested.
I second.
All those in favor? So you've got everybody, Kenya? We're good, thank you. Irene, would you feel comfortable with your back to the camera, but facing us?
Yeah, sure.
There you go.
Thank you so much for giving me time on such short notice. As you know, the Citizen Review Committee happens right after your meeting, and normally we have a subgroup that meets at this time. This is the outreach work group meeting, but it's canceled. Our CRC meeting is going to be at Berkeley Asian House. And so I wanted to take this opportunity to invite you and give you a couple of updates. One is that on March 11th at 2 p.m., Constantine will be presenting proposed city code changes to the appeals process, and I'm going to pass this down. And I'd love to see if any of you could come and support our changes. And basically to shorten the time time, the community member has to file an appeal from 30 days to 14 days. These changes were put together in cooperation with public and the CRC, so they had engagement with that. The other thing that I really wanted to talk to you about was that we have brand new CRC numbers. I'm going to pass their bios out. We have a fantastic new team. And where it really connects to you is that we would love to have the CRC work with the Human Rights Commission on different events. I feel like we do some of the similar work. And as some of you know, with Kyle and Damon, I participated on the Human Trafficking Task Force, and we collaborated on certain events together. And so I would just like to ask for everyone here to think about forums and different things. I'm going to pass these back.
I'm sorry, think about forums, did you say?
Forums and events to collaborate and put some of these on events together. And then, the most important thing I'd like to do is invite you all to participate in our CRC meetings, which are always at the same time as your meetings. So that's a broader conversation that you all can have.
Irene, can I ask you a question? So this 3.21.140, the change is taking it from what would have been a 30-day window to make a change down to 14. So for me, that just sounds like it's less time to be able to do something. If you find out something that you feel moved to, or you have time off from work on day 16, you are now too late to file a review. So can you just explain to me a bit of the rationale behind that decision?
That's directly to stay in compliance with the Department of Justice because.
So we had an extended, okay.
Yeah, because they want us to shorten our timeline for the whole complaint process. So there are other things that we put in place, like we hired more investigators to be able to do that investigative work more thoroughly. But one of the other things that the Department of Justice required is shorter, and that's one of the ways that we cut it.
So can you, I mean, in my brain, I'm thinking that that would be like less of an opportunity for people. Can you, I mean, outside of like the DOJ saying we want to do it, if we had this capacity to extend it based upon our own feelings because we're Portland, why would we change it to what seems like a more restricted?
Well, and that's why we're asking for community engagement on March 11th. Sign up and testify and share your feedback on that.
But these are you and Constantine, like this is, you guys want to do it this way because the DOJ is requesting us?
Yes, under request.
Okay.
Yeah, so maybe particularly for the new people, because the CRC meets the same time we do, it's very rare that we get to go to those meetings and keep up really well. But Irene, who's the outreach director for CRC, correct?
Or for IPR?
Excuse me, IPR, yeah.
IPR is
Independent Waste Review.
Thank you.
Which is the volunteer body of the CRC, volunteer
The
oversight.
CRC,
This
our
is the
volunteer
volunteer
body.
Of the
IPR.
IPR. Yeah. Both Irene and Constantine are very available. I've considered you both very available for conversation and collaboration. It was a number of months ago that we did not agree with some changes that were being made, and Diallo and I sat down with Constantine and we talked it out. Not that anything changed on their end, but there is a relationship, a diplomatic relationship that's already happening. So we should feel free to step into that and develop that more.
And the thing that the one thing that I want to tell you is that the CRC chair is very much committed to working with you and actually have a draft email that I'm still working on to connect both Diallo and you to our chair. And she's going to try and come to these meetings as much as she can, at least quarterly. And so we're looking at strategies to engage the CRC with the COAB and the CPRC and the Human Rights Commission. So.
I guess that's one question. You mentioned having collaborative forums. Do you have anything in mind for that at the moment?
I do. I would love to have a longer conversation about that. I know I will give 2 minutes.
It never is possible to do 2 minutes.
Yeah. But just to give you an idea of the event that we did put on, so our CRC member went to an event in collaboration with the Human Rights Commission, tabled, Kyle and I took turns tabling, on behalf of the Human Trafficking Task Force, and we shared the cost, and I feel like it was a great use of city resources. We would just love to share that.
Sure.
Especially that we have such an engaged and incredibly good team of volunteers.
Well, congratulations on all the hard work coming
Thank you.
forward to good things.
much. I really appreciate the short notice.
You're welcome.
Thought I'd use this opportunity.
Thanks, sir.
So I had an opportunity of attending the, excuse me, it's called the Women in Prison Conference. It was a free conference held in collaboration with the Worship Project and the Oregon Justice Resource Center on February 7th. The purpose of the conference is to really shed light on the disparity of women not only being sent to prison, but the impact that women in prison has on families in our greater community, specifically here in Portland. Some of the distinguished guests on the panel included the Honorable Adrian Nelson, also our own mayor, actually briefly spoke and actually participated by serving as an attendee and really listening to the participants. We were able to hear from women who are actually currently housed at the Coffee Creek Correction Facility, which surprisingly, I believe about 3/4 of the women there are mothers, so they all have children. During that time, or during the conference, there was an opportunity for us to actually view an awesome documentary about women in prison, and how when you send a woman to prison, you not only send her to prison, but you also send her family to prison. A local documentary maker, or filmmaker, I should say, who's very close friends with Mayor Hales, talked about the importance of educating our community about the human rights and justice for mothers who are in prison. The fact that obviously during a child's formative years, the mother is expected to be in their lives, obviously for their entire lives, but oftentimes these mothers are sent to prison during the most formative years of their children's lives. The other opportunity that came up during that conference was what additional advocacy around human rights could be provided. The Coffee Creek Correctional Facility implemented a very, I would say, a very innovative program to enable mothers in prison to actually parent on the grounds of the prison. So I believe twice a week, children could come to the prison, meet with their moms, actually do homework, and engage with their mothers as they typically would in their own home. But unfortunately, on the date of this conference, the state decided that they would no longer continue the program. So it was very, I would say, an interesting milestone. Not only the day that they released the documentary, but also the day that they lost funding for the program. And so everyone there, obviously, Mayor Hills was there, and everyone asked, what can we do as concerned community members to get more involved? And one of the things that we talked about was the impact of human trafficking and how a woman's pipeline to prison is often due to human trafficking. And every woman who sat on the panel had actually been trafficked to some degree in her life. The youngest had been sent to prison at the age of 17. She killed her pimp, and she was now 34 and preparing for release next year. So I just wanted to bring that back, A, because it's a free and a very dynamic event that draws attention from the legal community, from the government and political affairs community, and one that I think we might want to consider having a greater presence at, because there were so many people of not just influence, but people who are moving and shaking around the issue of human trafficking in the room. So that's it.
When is the next time you get involved with it?
Yeah, and so it was, I found out about it on Facebook. It was hosted February 7th, and I believe that's typically, it's hosted at Lewis and Clark Law School. And it's presented by the Worship Project and the Oregon Justice Resource Center. So yeah.
This is just once a year?
Yeah, it's once a year. And they're trying to do more in collaboration with the state of Washington, because the state of Washington has actually led the way with more innovative programming for mothers in prisons.
Will you share with us?
Yeah, I will. Yeah, I'll send it to you.
Was there any action recommended to do advocacy for re-establishing the program?
Right. So that was the question that I posed to the filmmaker, and his response was you know, he kind of pointed to Mayor Helms, because he was the closest lawmaker in the room. And so to perhaps testify before your lawmakers, and also notify your lawmakers that this program has been basically has ended because of the lack of funding. That was the one thing.
Is that states?
So it's Coffee Creek is a state run facility. But many of the children whose mothers are in prison there are actually here in Oklahoma County and Portland, so.
And one last thing,
Yeah.
did the commission ever come up with a stance on trafficking on the aircraft?
Damon, can you speak to that?
Can you ask it again?
Did the commission ever come up with a stance on human trafficking? Because I think that like the criminalization of it is an issue. And so, I'm wondering if I know that the task force has
I
them.
don't think the commission has it, actually. I don't recall. I know that there's a written report that we had when we had a panel a couple of years ago. I could resend that to everyone. I don't know if the actual commission actually adopted it.
And we could, a real quick route might be taking that statement from that report, basically with a problem statement, and adopting it, voting it in as our own. And that might be something that we could distribute to people working on that issue, letting them know that we're available, for example, for signing on to a letter in the name of the commission.
I'll send that report around and to everyone.
Great. Thanks for, Rob, we need to move on, so
Okay.
one more, and then
So
let's
was
move
there
on.
any other, in the discussion that happened during the conference on the question of advocacy, was there any other thing proposed? I noticed you mentioned education.
Well, the Honorable Judge Nelson mentioned the concern around minimum sentencing requirements. And
Mandatory.
the mandatory minimum sentencing requirements. And there needs to be a greater, not just education, but there needs to be a complete overhaul of those minimum requirements. Because that seems to be where mothers and women who are entering the prison system are facing most likely.
Thanks. So I know you need to leave at 5. We have a little time before 5, but I wonder if we just jump into HSC and the COAB before you go. I see Emanuel's here. So Emanuel is continuing on with his role as the appointed rep for the COAB, and everybody knows what the COAB is at this point. Yes? Okay. And we didn't have a chance to brainstorm. We were going to brainstorm about ways you might bring back what you're learning and working on, and how we might support you. So you might have ideas about that if you wanted to share. And then, yes.
It's still very new. Like, we just finished the bylaws, and I was gonna read something, because I was like, let me just have something prepared. So this is an email that just went out not too long ago. I'm trying to find the most juiciest part. Let's see. So our next meeting is next Wednesday, I believe, the 12th. So I'll just kind of read just a couple paragraphs, it won't take too much time. First, we had, actually this is from Rosenbaum. Justice Dominguez is out of town, so he's just kind of filling in for him until he gets back.
And Rosenbaum is the one or the lead of the COCO team.
Yes, by way of Chicago, I believe. So this is Dennis Rosenbaum, the official COCO for the settlement. Given that Judge Dominguez is on travel and given the nature of this electronic discussion, I'm sending you the agenda for the March 12th COAB meeting. Then I'll skip down. It says, first, we have every intention of reviewing the auditor's report on PPB, Department of Police Bureau training, as well as conducting our own independent assessment of PPB training. We feel strongly that training is one of the most important tools for police reform, and we intend to review the audit in a systematic manner, seeking input from the COAB. The question here is whether we can afford to spend the next COAB meeting focusing on the auditor's report in light of the full range of time-sensitive tasks before the COAB. Out of that, they also wanted to create an additional committee group of members and maybe an appointed person from HRC and some of the other organizations to kind of, if I'm articulating it right, to get it so they can have just like their own independent process, which they will report back to us. So we don't want to have it so heavy with titles and all this other stuff, but throw a title in there, whether it's an HRC or somebody from Rosenbaum's office to kind of help implement the work or receive recommendations from folks who are not usually at the table. Did that make sense?
When I hear you saying, tell me if I'm wrong, it's a way of expanding the community input through
Yes.
subcommittees?
Thank you.
Yeah, and so that's what I've heard, that they're opening up subcommittee membership to
Mhm.
other people from the community.
So they're still filtering through that process. Then I'm gonna skip down. So this is a note, this note is a long way of saying that as a first basic task, I'm hoping we can stay in compliance with the settlement agreement deadline and collect useful survey data from community members and police officers. That means having a serious dialogue about our surveys on March 12th. We have time to prioritize and implement other tasks as we move forward, and some of these can be assigned to subcommittees, which is what I was speaking of earlier. Later this week, he's going to send some materials for the meeting next Wednesday, and I believe that's just about it. So it's still very new. We just kind of formalized or finalized the bylaws. And I was able to throw a piece about recidivism in there, as well as changing some of the language. Instead of the community oversight and advisory board, I recommended that we take the "and" out, because that can change the whole dynamic of the group. I also wanted to put in there, or somebody also made mention of saying racial profiling, I believe, because that's what's been happening. So even though it's, just to make sure I have that language in there. Also, I said something about keeping a focus on people who are being released out of incarceration, because at least 85% of those people will have some type of mental disability or illness where they get out and a lot of things happen after they run out of that 90-day blister pack of medication that they have, which can, result in homelessness, police interaction, and so on and so forth. So I was really adamant about getting that language in there, and just at least to get it on record, if nothing else. And just kind of looking forward to the next meeting Wednesday. They also had a social gathering last week that it wasn't mandatory, so I didn't go. And yeah, that's where we're at with that right now.
What time is the meeting next Wednesday?
6 or 7.
Is there a place where they're upload, there's a webpage, isn't there?
I'm not sure.
I believe that, I've heard there was a
There's a
webpage
Facebook
set
page
up.
actually.
Okay.
I think Sharon Maxwell or somebody created it.
I just wonder, well, I've seen different appointee members have their own Facebook pages, but I'm wondering if there's a centralized spot, or there will be, where we can look and see
Actually,
updates.
I believe there is. They
Yeah.
talked about that in one of the earlier meetings about having that as a web page, and they'll roll it out, I guess, whenever they have all the information they want to put on there. So, and then just figuring out who's going to be the stand-in or the supportive person with the COAB besides myself.
You mean out of HRC?
Yeah.
Okay.
So, is that the?
Yeah,
Okay.
okay, that sounds easy.
Okay.
I was just waiting on confirmation, and happy that you can do that.
So are you, and I know we kind of talked about this, and I think the goal was to just continue to massage this out as we go forward. Is it your plan to attend those meetings also as a part of the public piece, or just to read?
Based on Emanuel's feedback, do you think it would be supportive to have someone, the alternate, there with you?
Absolutely, because there are some meetings that I'm not going to be able to make by way of being a father, and other committees and things that I may have to attend. So it'd be helpful just to have somebody stand in, just to kind of represent the HRC and kind of bring back that information to the table. And then also, as a Human Rights Commissioner, what are you guys expecting myself and Sonji or whomever else to bring back to the table? And then how strong of a presence can we bring to the COAB? Because the last thing I want to do is waste anybody's time and sit around another meeting and talk about things that are not going to happen. So I want to make sure that I have some concise steps as to what we can give to them and what I can take away.
So I know one of the things we talked about before was maybe just having an off-site meeting, and you and I are we literally work in the same building, and so that might help. And Sonji, I don't know if you're on the east side or not.
I'm downtown.
You're downtown, okay. So maybe we can just set up between the three of us, and if someone else is also interested in being there, so we can actually talk about and strategize around exactly that. What what and how can the HRC plan to have this work be, apparent at this table, while you're sitting at that table, how it feeds into future work that we're doing, things like that. And so I will commit to sending an email out to you two. Is there anyone else who would be interested or wants to at least just talk about that? If not, we can just bring it back to next meeting.
I'd be interested.
How radical can we be? Like, how hard can we go?
Good question.
Like, I really want to show that.
Well, it sounds like you've been pushing some of the envelopes already. Sounds good. Okay. All right.
Can I just ask a question,
Yes.
information? Is the COAB, as my beginning understanding of it, it's dealing with human rights, but through the mental health lens? Like, really, it's mental health and everything else kind of like has to go through a mental health lens somehow.
Yeah.
And, I mean, and obviously, it's related, but that's what its main job is.
From my understanding, yes, but also to mental health, to go through the mental health lens is like our first step. And then we can talk about all the racial and all the other brutality and all the other stuff that comes along with that. I think racial should just be first, but the focus. But I guess we're gonna start with the small hanging, the low hanging fruit and work our way through it that way.
So I would actually, I would go up a few notches. So the COAB is, comes from the existence of what essentially is a COPL, which comes from the existence of the Department of Justice settlement. So because there's a settlement, a portion of the settlement was having a COPL in place that would be driven and guided by the COAB. So I wouldn't necessarily say like human rights is what they're working on. I would say that the Department of Justice, federal government said to the city of Portland, this is what you guys need to do. The city of Portland
Which
entered
is
into it.
mental health
Right.
training and sensitivity, isn't that what?
That's an aspect of it. So it's a really long document, and I think that it would be,
Yeah.
not that we want extra
Yeah,
homework,
I
but.
just, I read the summary of it, but that's what,
Yeah.
that's why, what the impression I got is that it was really a kind of a directive to Portland to say, you've got to get your mental health training and sensitivity together.
So
That's simplified, it's really simplified.
The investigation, or some people call it an audit, that DOJ did have to do with, and their findings were that the Portland Police Bureau has a pattern of excessive use of force with the mentally ill. So the agreement between the Portland Police Bureau and the city and the DOJ was to address that. So the COAB is designed to help oversee that agreement. So you'll get into technical things about the specifics of that agreement, which does include training, but that's not all of it.
It's just one of the.
Yeah.
There's a whole series of things that need to,
It's really exciting to me that we get to be part of this and that you both are doing this work. I need to say thank you, and we need to move on. Because Cameron Whitten is here, and we also have Dante scheduled for 5. I want to give Cameron about 15 minutes. Do you have a question? Oh, I'm so sorry. I just did forget. That's all.
Emanuel, I'm going to put together the agenda for the CPRC. I'm going to meet with Krebs next week. We'll probably go over the audit. So once I confirm that, your meeting's before our meeting. So perhaps you can communicate that to the people at the COAB and the people at that meeting that the CPRC will be going over the audit. Once I confirm it, so we're going to work together. So if you guys don't have the time to go over it, the CPRC can take on that responsibility.
You mean, I
The audit.
didn't hear you like,
The audit.
sorry.
Yeah, the audit that you were talking about. Yeah.
Okay.
So I'm going to suggest that to Krebs when I meet him to set the agenda.
Krebs was vendor, or Assistant Chief Mike Krebs,
Assistant Chief Mike Krebs, yes.
or Police Bureau.
Yes. Thank you.
Okay, great. So I'm suggesting we move executive committee and staff report until after Cameron's and after Dante's updates. I guess.
Am I sitting right here? Right. Wait, I have to sit where I can be. Yeah, there you go.
So I want to give an introduction to Cameron. Sorry?
Joe's seen enough.
We have a moving camera today, that's really great. You guys get close-ups. I bet a lot of you know Cameron. I met Cameron during Occupy, right? And-
Probably.
Yeah. And we saw each other downtown in some interesting situations, and have kept in touch. There was a while when I was on my bicycle, we were meeting on the street a lot. And so this is a man who is everywhere, and I'm really glad you could join us. And Cameron visited us 6 months ago to tell us about a project that he's been working on. Diallo at that point decided he could be a liaison to his project, and I'm just going to leave it at that and let you go with what you've got to tell us.
Wonderful. And it's not true I'm not everywhere I need to be, like supposed to be in class right now, but human rights is so important. It's great to see you guys. You guys look fresh. The lasagna looks fresh, so I'm happy to be here. And thanks for having me back, after 6 months. Most people think I talk too much, so I'm just happy to be here. I do have handouts. If you guys want to pass them out. These two are just one pages, and then I also brought some pictures of who we're working with. So it's been 6 months, and a lot's happened then, so I will try to be really brief, because I know you guys have precious time. We only have 15 minutes. In the time since we last talked, that was a stage where we really were talking with initial partners, people who would help us really feed into the vision of what we could be doing that really expands and leverages the potential for human rights advancement in the Metro region. And since that period of time, we've been off to it's actually like 3 pages. You have to take. Sorry. Sorry. So in that period of time, we've done a lot. We went to the IRS. We got our 501c3 status. We brought together a diverse board of 9 individuals. We have 30 active volunteers in our 3 main committees that work on outreach, development, and arts programs. We've brought in a lot of stakeholders together, working really hard on putting together programs that can be measured and how we find funding for those programs. We already got our first funding from Black United Fund to really help us with a lot of technical support. We just got an announcement earlier this week that we'll be partnering with 2 different PSU capstones. One is working through the business administrative department, and they're actually doing a feasibility study for what I'm here to talk to you today about, which is the Humanity Lab. And the other capstone we're working with is with Kristen Teagan, and she does a fundraising and development capstone with students. We really are bringing in people from all different levels. There's a lot of energy coming in. So what I'm here today to talk about is the Humanity Lab, and it's an evolution of what we were talking about 6 months ago, where we realized that it was really important to talk about cultural preservation, talking about community documentation at a grassroots level. How do we make sure that everyone's voices, everybody's cultures, everybody's stories and backgrounds, those are all honored and those are accessible and people are able to understand more of who we are as a diverse community, because as an organization and through our conversations we've had with the community, there are concerns that that mutual understanding isn't where it should be, isn't where it needs to be. And so we posed the Humanity Lab as an idea. And the Humanity Lab is an online platform. It's a web experience that would be home to multimedia exhibits, audio, visual, video, a lot of different artistic mediums that highlight diversity of Oregon, past and present. And we're actually talking with some technology partners right now. And through our approach, we decided not to just build an educational platform, but to build community through this. So we're working with Brother Man Tech, Log Camp, and iAbertine Tech, and these groups exclusively work with young kids of color, low-income kids, at-risk youth. And so the idea is for us to give these economic opportunities, build skills within digital storytelling, and also more citizen responsibility and really teaching lessons like that. So we're really excited for the opportunity to really mold the Humanity Lab. And the capstones for this spring term will end in June. So we'll have a really good understanding from our feasibility study about the stages that we can make this go forward. So there's a lot of different gears moving at once. You know, for example, we've got, you know, at least 3 different grants due this month. We've had really great conversations with funders so far. One of our advisory board members, Elizabeth First, she set up a meeting with us with the Jubitz family next week. So there's definitely people who are excited and want to hear more. We've also been meeting pretty regularly with partners at the county, at different education administration and unions, and we've been meeting with the mayor's office pretty frequently in the past 6 months as well. So the engagement's still there. We're still getting a lot of positive feedback about desire for this to happen. You know, but you know, re-emphasizing the fact why we are a nonprofit, we see so much that is changing all the time, especially state level with the governor, at even PPS level, where we've had a lot of leadership not, you know, choose run for re-election. So we know that there's always issues with us taking something that's such a strong mission and, you know, not bringing consistent leadership. And so we're really dedicated as a nonprofit to make sure that we have stability within our mission, within our stakeholders, and continue to partner with our governments even as they're going through all the changes. So really excited to see what's going to happen out of that. And one of the things that I wanted to talk about was the idea of bringing this to City Council. We are talking about a budget cycle, and you know, one of the things that came up within our research was the concern around the Portland plan, where they actually talked about supporting efforts to diversify curriculum within schools. And I've been talking with a lot of people asking, you know, what are we doing as a city in terms of that curriculum, or, you know, in terms of, you know, in broader, you know, human rights and cultural recognition. And there's some good things going on. Like RAC, you know, decided to diversify grants they're giving out to make sure that people who come from geographic and cultural diverse areas are more likely to get grants. But we still feel like there's a lot that we want to do, a lot of impact, especially on a grassroots community level. And so my proposal is that we go to City Council and we talk about this and its importance, and really wanting to hear from you guys your vision of what this could be, the content, who we include as, you know, as collaborators. But we really do feel like it's been a great relationship, especially working with Diallo. He's been really helpful coming to board retreats and coming to board meetings and outreach meetings. So he's come to a lot of meetings. And so we want to continue that relationship, and we really want your support. We feel like we want to see human rights work like what we're doing, recognized by the city, and we think you guys would be our best allies and friends. That was a lot.
We have some time for questions, but I just want to help frame what you're after.
Yeah.
So, and well done with providing us all that information in a breath. You've got a statement of your organizational statement.
Yeah.
You've got a project statement, Humanity Lab.
Yeah.
You're offering us an opportunity to advocate for you, with you.
Yeah.
And part of that is to City Council to encourage that there be funding initiative for human rights related curriculum in the schools, mentioning the Portland plan as being a call to do that.
Yes.
Am I tracking so far?
Yes.
Okay. So 2 things what I'm hearing, what we could help you with perhaps is general support, general endorsement, continuing, and then anything specific that you would want to bring to City Council. We probably need more prep.
Yes.
To see what are we really looking at and what might be the endorsement for that.
Yes.
Okay.
Thank you.
Yeah.
And also along those lines, Diallo, since you are serving as our liaison, is there, in the time that you spent at meetings and things, has something outside of what you just kind of captured there come up where you think, your thoughts are, this is how the HRC should engage with regards to this?
Outside of that, this is feel like what we should be doing is supporting that way.
Questions, Cameron?
Are you guys, oh, sorry.
No, go ahead.
Ladies first.
Okay, so just in terms of how we can support you, that would be like endorsing, like just to clear a sense of like what we might be able to do to be helpful.
So I know what was pitched 6 months ago was the idea of having like a task force, which I don't know, within technical language it has to be that way, but I think the idea is that there is more of a merging collaborative effort around this to see, how we can really be intimately working together to make a project like this possible. We've been working for about a year, really visioning what the Humanity Lab could be, and we are definitely working really hard on private fundraising. Part of our strategy is a crowdfunding campaign starting in early January next year. But there definitely is already conversations and already directive from a city level and at a state level to be talking and preserving these stories. And so we think that there's also those leverage points and those talking points about how do we have public-private partnership on this. And since you guys are, representative of a public entity, we want to have advice and we want to have a really strong ally in going to city council and talking about this during budget cycle.
And I mean, I wouldn't mind also if we collaborated on some type of event. I know you were also thinking about doing those mini workshops or mini summits. And so I feel like that's something that we could also support with, is helping with those summits if possible. If that's okay with you.
Are you talking about specifics, like for the online museum, which you're envisioning?
Yeah.
That's what I
Yeah.
assume is your main project. Then are you talking, Diallo, like that, I don't know, that we would make recommendations of people to be interviewed, or, I mean, how do you envision that our role would be in the development of this online museum? I mean, what, aside from supporting the concept?
I think that if we put something into writing as far as supporting it, that might help, but what do you think?
So I think that's part of it, especially if the Human Rights Commission would be involved in the micro summits aspect. The basic idea of the micro summits came from the fact that we didn't want to have a launch event. We wanted something that allowed people within their communities, within the identities that they feel most safe in, feel like there's a space for them to give feedback and engage. And so we decided that we want to have many micro summits. Not sure how many at this point. It's really capacity-wise. We have 10 volunteer members on our outreach network. We're still, working to grow that. And so, if the HRC was involved with that, that means, going out, creating connections, and collecting stories. That's one of the objectives, collect stories. 2 is to get other ideas. So the 2 things that we're talking about right now is the Humanity Lab, and it's also curriculum. The curriculum would be, actually working system-wide within the school districts to make sure that teachers have the resources and then are also trained in how to talk about these things with their youth. Currently, that's not being done very much. I was talking with Markeisha Smith on Monday. She works for the Office of Equity within the Oregon Department of Education. And when the bill was passed, Senate Bill 739, it was passed in 2013. It was appropriated $100,000, and they contracted most of that funding to get an understanding of some of the histories. And so they contracted out with some individual historians. They also contracted with the Oregon Historical Society, but there was no funding in that at all for any kind of development of curriculum or any engagement of administrators or teachers. So there's still a gap, and we're definitely working with them as partners. And for example, we just spoke this Saturday to the Human Rights Commission for OEA, the Oregon Education Association. So we really are, bringing people together for that, but that conversation is going to be really long-term. They're talking about educational curriculum and making it implemented, which takes a long time. Humanity Lab we can do right now, because that means that we're going out in the community, collecting stories, and we are building a platform for those to be hosted, and those for people to share. And the other thing that we're really trying to focus on is the idea of what does it mean to be interactive now, because we're really talking a lot about our focus on youth. And for youth, it can't just be, a Wikipedia page. And so we're talking about different gamification or socialization aspects where people can share and socialize and track their progress and test themselves. So it really is a chance for us to do something that's kind of cutting edge that really, I think, would get more people excited about, identifying as human rights leaders.
So lots, yes.
What conversations do you have with the city's Office of Equity and Human Rights?
Dante and Diallo, we sat down a few months ago, and Other than that, I've met with a few people who've worked with Office of Equity, but I definitely think that we view the Office of Equity as an ally, and I appreciated the feedback that Dante gave us a few months ago when we last talked, and I think that indeed we want to also get feedback from everybody who really cares about how the city's doing on equity and human rights, to see if we're doing it right. We totally are looking for feedback and critical feedback, and we want to be able to work together.
Are you guys paying any attention to, I'm sure you have, but the school prison pipeline, and then maybe the standardized tests that the kids take, maybe redefining that, and what does that look like, since the tests that they take are not always accurately capturing the knowledge that they know, so then of course they're going to fail?
Those are really good content. It's very important areas to talk about. And so within our vision statement, we created a baseline of human rights. One of them is the issue of criminal justice and criminal sentencing. The other part that you mentioned was Common Core, you said, standardized testing. It's currently not within what we defined as human rights. These things are still being, the idea is that we created a baseline to talk to the community and really understand the priority areas that we want to work in. So I think that there's definitely, there is need to educate on that. And I do think it's a social justice issue. I think it's a human rights issue, especially seeing who is most disparately impacted by Common Core and standardized testing. I would say that we are really at a stage of bringing in sustainability of this project. I think the content specifics part we haven't been able to put much time into. For example, we have 3 active volunteer committees. The Arts and Programs is only meeting for its 2nd time this month. So we really focused on development and outreach at the first part. But as we, especially I think after the summertime, I think the timing is perfect for us talking about the content.
So this is a large conversation.
Yep.
I want to suggest that we invite you back, and whatever happens with you and Diallo and whoever wants to be involved with supporting you off the general meeting time, great. Thanks, Toji. But what I would suggest is developing, during that off time, developing specific requests.
Yep.
So if it's Humanity Lab, what kind of feedback do you want from us around that? Is it requesting funding or endorsements in some other way from City Council? How can we support you about that? Let's take pieces, bite-sized pieces, and address it as a commission moving forward.
That sounds great.
Good.
More questions?
Yes.
I would also say that might be something Diallo could bring to a
Yes.
retreat. I mean, if that's something that you want to argue for being on our agenda for the coming year, then that you'd be the one that would make that bridge.
I second Diallo doing more work. Well, thank you all.
Okay, so we are 2 minutes to the time for public statements. And what's your timing like? Can you wait? Okay, thank you. Alan's checking in on we're a finely tuned commission right now. Wow.
Nobody is signed up for public comment, but that doesn't mean it doesn't exist.
Is anyone out there interested in making a comment to us? Request? Levon? What? She's here, okay. Great. So moving right along. We're ready for you. Hi.
Good afternoon. I have a few things informational and maybe an ask. FYI, our annual report will be presenting to City Council on March 18th at 9:30 time certain, which means probably 10 o'clock. And so if anyone is available or interested in being there and offering any thoughts or comments, please let me know. That would be great. Hopefully in support of the work that we do.
Brooke,
18th or 19th?
March 18th.
18th, okay.
So Wednesday at 9:30. This is what it looks like. It's not out for public consumption yet because we haven't presented it to council yet, but this is what it looks like. Within there, we didn't put a lot for HRC because you are now, you said you are going to planning on going to council and doing your own report. So literally we put in some achievement highlights, the Emily Awards and the roundtable for homelessness, the free legal advice session for victims of trafficking. So just a few of those. Dave Elgorley, Minister Alliance for Justice and Police Reform, giving the awards, so those kinds of things in here, just to recognize the work that you've done. And I'm curious, is there a date yet been scheduled for?
The date that we're shooting for is the first week of April, so it'll be April 4th.
And I'm planning,
6th.
I'm planning that, and Shabri and/or Alan may join me, and anybody's
I
welcome
won't
to
join the first
attend.
week of April.
Okay.
I will.
Okay. And that's at what time? It's an afternoon thing, right?
It'll be
We don't know. Okay.
Depends
That's
which
right.
day it is.
At 9:30, you said?
or Thursday, that you use the next
Okay.
so somewhere in there.
Thank you.
I'm sorry, which report is this?
So this is a annual report to City Council on HRC's happenings for the year.
And when is that, the 4th?
Six.
The 6th, that's a Monday.
Can't be late.
It's the 8th.
Okay.
And do I hear that you, Amy, are taking the lead on that?
Yeah, I am going to write it, and I'm really happy to take feedback about what content should be in there. I'm going to write it, and Jeff has agreed to format it in a similar way that they did last year.
Yeah, it was nice looking.
It was a 4-pager,
Yeah.
similar to what you guys have put together, but smaller, shorter.
So it doesn't need a lot of time, so it has to be in at least a week before it goes to council. So
That's good to know.
It's got to be done by the end of this month,
Yeah.
because they used to go to the clerk for a week before with 8 or 10 copies, et cetera, so.
One suggestion I would make during the last week is that maybe there would be a page in this report that had bios and photographs of each of the commission members. That would be an actual page of the report of the people that served,
Yes.
13, 14, or whatever.
Yes, we've been trying to get commissioners to get their bios on the webpage for as long as I've been here. So if we can get that would be really great. So if that's something that's of interest to you guys, let's work on that.
Can I ask just a question? I know that Amy mentioned that the time in particular is not new. Is there a reason that we're doing it on the 8th? Can we not push it? And the only reason I asked for pushback. Okay.
That date.
Okay. Just if we need to formulate, if we still have things that we need to capture from people. I mean, and I think it's a very simple, right? You either get your bio in or you're not included in. Like, it's really simple. We're all adults. Well, I'm talking about in particular for bios, but for the report to be written, produced to council, you said a week before.
Well, it needs to be so that I can get the council packet before and submit the whole packet to
Yeah.
the.
So just with that work back time, I'm just asking. Right.
Yeah.
Are we feeling like that's a?
Well, yeah, and originally it was middle of March. When we talked about it before, we talked about middle of March, and so I asked for that to be pushed back, but I don't have a problem with it being pushed back further.
And I'm not suggesting we continue to pick a date out there. I'm just asking us, let's produce something that.
Yeah.
And I mean, considering Jeff's work time as well,
So that's going to require a lot of.
so I don't know what it's gonna require, but it'll require.
Depending on how Amy gives me input over to Jeff, it'll determine whether or not he has to do a whole lot with it, or if it's just plug and play. Hopefully, it's all clean, ready to go, and all it has to do is plug it into the boxes and add the pictures.
And it's a 4-pager, so it doesn't sound crazy, but.
I was just gonna say, as a person who does that as part of my daily job,
It's not.
people always think it's really quick.
Right,
It's
and
not.
it being just a 4-page, it doesn't mean that it's easy.
No, yeah.
So would there be any harm in pushing it back a couple of weeks or till the last week of April?
That's my question. I don't know. I just don't want to.
I don't think so. We can check with the clerk, they can tell us, one, if all council will be there. We don't want to present when only 3 folks are there. And so they can give you that answer on a particular day. And other than that, it's just if you want to and when you want to.
Dante, does our report have any impact at all on your budget advocacy?
Not at this time. Next year, which is my next piece of conversation, next year it may, this year no. But thank you for the question.
Yeah, that's a question I have about the budget. So I know we were discussing that at the retreat, which I don't know when we're doing that, but that's not for this year, right? That's not affected by, okay.
So maybe we need to decide offline whether we can make that equally today.
I guess,
If you're writing, it's probably more up to you.
right, and so I guess the question is, how much do you feel like, how much input, or outside of like bios from people, right? How much other information do we need to put together?
I don't need a whole lot, it's just, let's get a pulse, how many people want to contribute to this at the table? Okay.
At least all the chairs need to contribute, because.
That's a good point.
Yeah,
Same feeling, yeah.
we need that contact.
You'll need, days of give and take back and forth with Jeff, and here's the draft, and here's what it looks like, and I'll move this over here, so you.
So let's look at the last week of April.
That's what they call maybe me. Because
Can you could just,
if there's a snafu around the last week of April, like, the last time I spoke with Rachel, she was saying that council was there's gonna be a skipped dates in there.
Okay.
It might be that one, I'm not sure, but.
Last week of April, first week of May. Everybody?
can you send out to people, because I think you did it for the 3 of us, you had us like write up a, 4-sentence bio.
That's been sent to everybody before, you guys got it because you were coming out.
Yeah, but I mean, if you said the same thing out to everybody else.
It's been sent out. Like, the request wasn't just for you guys. We requested bios from each class as they come through, and from existing HRC members at another time. And you guys didn't get a template. You guys used one of the
They
previous
just put an
classes.
example given.
It might have been Shabri's.
So, and then so for what do you need in terms of bios? Let's see. If folks aren't finding that template, can they go ahead and ask you for it to be resent? Okay.
There was like,
It's
she,
just a sample of.
Can they ask you for that sample if they can't find it and they want to contribute their bio?
Yeah.
Okay.
It's just called sample bio.
It's just a bio. Hey, this is my name. This is what I do.
Okay.
let's
turn this back over to Dante.
Like this kind of stuff.
Yeah.
This is a good, something to start with.
Yeah, but if
It'd be
we
more
wanna
4
like.
pages if you do that.
Yeah, but like, can
Less
we,
than that,
we need to
right.
like, can
Big
we go
picture.
back to the scope of it?
Yeah, yeah.
As I think said last time, the budget is in. The budget office, process-wise, the budget office now and our budget analysts review our budget requests. Then they come back and make a recommendation for approving or not approving our request. And so be it for financial or reorganization of dollars to create a position. So we didn't ask for any new money. We asked for reorganization reallocation of fundings currently so that we could allocate for a part-time to three-quarter time position. So that was approved, if that's the right word. The budget office recommended approval of that request. So for the most part, I don't expect that we have any problem going through council because we're not asking for any new money. And so the expectation is we will get that new person. The funding request, more for the Black Male Achievement Initiative, which is already in the mayor's budget, so it wasn't an ask of ours. So our budget requests have been approved. That said, the process this year required that each bureau now create a set of performance indicators as a measurement of, I won't say success, but I'll say success. And so so what we've done in looking at our work, and our work includes the work of the HRC, the work of PCOD, the work of DEEP, which is the Diversity Empowered Employees of Portland, Infinity Groups. To remove the idea that how many times you meet is a success. And look at now what are the outcomes of your meeting. What are the outcomes of the community engagement work that you do, the community educational work that you do. You know, CPRC, what is CPRC doing in outcomes for things? And so we put in some particular indicators for HRC. Some were how many times did you provide kind of consulting and recommendation assistance to elected officials or bureau directors? How many times did you provide educational opportunities for community as the performance indicator? Not, you know, you met 12 times and had something to do. So those will be the performance indicators that are reviewed and evaluated next budget year. So it may in fact then impact at least the answers I have to give in council if there have not been outcomes from this group, from PCOD, from
So to clarification then, the KPI essentially is looking at outcomes, and outcomes are recommendations offered to elected officials and educational opportunities offered to citizens? Is that like as broad as it is, or
yes.
I guess because it would be great for.
It's not even recommendation, it's consulting with.
It was advisements, that was the actual.
Okay.
For more consulting concepts.
Okay.
And then you have to draft some recommendations. But consulting either because you made it happen or they came to you and asked for something.
And was there a number attached to that?
There was, I think it was between 4 to 6.
For each of those.
Okay.
Okay.
So will we see those, sorry if we've already seen them, but will we see those indicators that we're very clear to track our progress?
Before.
Well, I've been having conversations with the auditor's office in a separate capacity about how we can move from activity-based sort of outcomes to actual, or activity-based outputs, sort of measuring how many times you met, that kind of thing, to actually measuring outcomes which are aligned with your mission, goals, objectives, all of that. So I think it's great that we're doing that. I just want to make sure I can see it. So
When did we have that approved?
I don't think we can actually leave it ago.
Does anyone else
I
recall
don't
that?
remember.
Sorry?
Does anyone else recall that?
I don't remember,
You guys,
I remember
executive
talking,
committee.
yeah, I remember you being mentioned in an executive committee meeting.
That's
Go
what-
ahead.
Last thing you guys on the executive committee.
So I think one of the requests would be if you, with regard to how for staff support of HRC and these, I mean, I think it's a great movement on how you account for what's happening. If there is a way that you can either like literally verbalize what an advisement or whatever, you know, whatever actual language it is and what one counts for, and Kenya, if you could, even if it's a tally sheet, right, that you can keep track of it for us, and I assume that we'll surpass that 4 to 6 probably within the first quarter, hopefully whenever this starts to kind of go into effect.
July 1st?
July 1, okay.
See.
So
So I have a system for tracking the advisements already in place.
Awesome.
And I can maybe get with Julie for more of a definition of what all examples, what an advisement would be.
Is there something that's like a whole, like consistent across your, no, okay. So maybe we can just, find out what you determine that to be, and then just the basic tally sheet so that we can not only make sure we've met our 4, but continue to talk about them if we need to reflect that in the later report.
Like,
Whatever it
would
looks
that
like.
include like the race talks and the facilitation of
No,
the?
that's not in
No,
Because
it would
that's
be like the
consulting.
JTTF statement,
It would be like what
Council.
JTTF did
we should have done that on July 1st.
to that, the event that they did in with IPR.
I mean, city council report.
Yeah.
Right,
now.
yeah.
Yeah,
So again, I think,
testimony to-
I'm not worried at all about the 4 to 6 or hitting those. I think I'm just worried about us making sure that we're capturing them, making sure that we have shared knowledge of what that actually looks like, and then allowing us to also just kind of ask ourselves in the midst of the work that we're doing, is this,
How effective are we?
is this an outcome, and are we
And
advising
this
in some way?
reflect the human rights issue, so if these advisements or consultations have to be around an actual human rights issue. So that's why before we were talking about when we send advisements, when we make statements, we need to attach them to the human rights.
I know typically we include like article, we'll say like
Right.
based upon article 172 or whatever. So I think that maybe for that then, and I don't know how much more work this is, but outside of just that tally sheet that you're using, maybe there's a just a simple an additional column that includes just a number for whatever one of the universal rights it is. Do you know what I'm saying? So if it's hitting
But I'm
7,
not using a tally sheet.
you're not using a tally sheet.
No,
Okay.
I'm collecting them and I'm putting them in like a narrative form so that I can know what they are and I can say, oh, if somebody says how many, I can go back and say this one, this one, this one, and this is who it went to. What's important is who it went to and was it a human rights issue.
Right, and I think what Shabri is saying is in order to help track if it's a human rights issue or not, she's just suggesting that it be, let you list which declaration it is in that narrative.
I'm doing something to that.
Okay.
It's not like number 25 was advised upon, but I have a system for doing it.
And it might be something that you
Maybe I'll just show you what I already do, and maybe that'll meet what you're looking for.
Yeah, and then I also think that before we have to turn it in, whatever that date looks like, whether it's April of 2016 or something, that we can sit down and really look over it, and maybe that's something that we can just quickly go down.
You guys
That's,
have to turn it.
I recognize that. I know that it's something that you guys have to turn in, but I'm just saying, maybe it's something that we, at a later date, can just look over as we're referencing, and then we can just go through and say, okay, that's 1, 7, and 15 at this one, that's 2, 4, and 7 at this one, that's, you know. So it doesn't have to be something that you're, I guess, updating at the same time, but.
Yeah, so one question, and I'd like to say something, and I probably should move on.
Or, I don't think you're done yet. You haven't.
Yeah, or what I meant was Dante.
Oh.
I wanted to move Dante.
Okay, yeah. I can talk faster.
Do we have a shared, place where we can access that information if we need to? Because it might be nice to just, like if you're keeping track of it, if there's some way that we need to look at it for anything or cross-reference it, like, do we have a shared Google Doc or something where we can?
If the full commission had access to it, it would have to be public.
That would
And
be
it could
okay.
It could be on the
That's- I don't
website.
see
The
any
website
problem
would
with
be the logical place for it.
Because, it'd just be nice to have kind of a fund of information if we need to check on something. If you-
Progress ongoing. Okay.
Yeah.
I want to put my HRCA as an independent body hat on, which I really just tend to do a lot. And I think this is great, and I understand and appreciate the need, the need above you and the need within OEHR to get this done, and I think it's going to really serve us. What I would love to see moving forward is that those indicators and conversation about it are developed with us, if it's possible in the future, because I think that'll just help us feel like and really exist as a more independent body, and it will also develop a better collaboration with the office.
Okay. Noted. Couple other things. One, and I learned this today, so it may be of interest, maybe not. We got a request from, or at least a call from the Office of Government Relations regarding a legislation. It's sitting up at Salem, and I don't know where it is, if it's in committee, trying to come out of committee, but it's essentially entitled The Right to Rest, and it deals with homelessness, so you're familiar with that? Okay. So there was a request of my office to either support it, take no position, support it with recommendations, et cetera. So what I suggested was that we would support it with recommendation for clarification, because there were some things within it that I don't think were clear, putting on my legal hat anyway, that caused me heartburn. And so that was essentially what we did. And I can give you one quick example, if we have time. There was a phrase in there that said that those who are homeless in their place of wherever would have the same rights as anyone else in their home dwelling. And so what I said was, I don't know whether Oregon has this law or not. In Colorado, there's a make my day law. You break into my house, I shoot you, I'm not going to get charged with anything. And so if I'm living in the park and this is my home space and I think you've now invaded that and I stab you, what's the ramification? I don't know, because that wasn't clear to me. And so it's an extreme example, but it's an example that still isn't answered. And so I just said that there needs to be some clarification as to what those rights are that are allocated and afforded to those who are homeless versus those who are in the dwelling. So that was
Do you want something from us on that? Because it's certainly something, especially the Housing Rights Task Force that we've talked about.
Yeah, well,
it comes from the Homeless Bill of Rights and RAP and all those things.
And I said, I'm coming here, and the answer I got was they want an answer by 5 o'clock today.
Wow. Yeah, I saw that.
And they called it 1.
Yeah.
So
okay.
That's all I got.
Okay. Okay.
Okay.
And I know that there's an advocacy day that they have coming up in March that, well, the advocacy group side of the RAP folks. Okay. So
I would suggest, because Judith is our liaison, and so they called Judith and said, by 5, give me something.
Wow.
And so you might call them back, or we can check back in with them and see what the time frame is for, to offer
Can I ask a couple of points of clarification with the legislative process? So is the Office of Government Relations already in support of this and they just want some analysis? They want an analysis.
They don't support it all.
They don't support it all. They wanted your office to look at it and come back with here are some gaps.
They just wanted to know a position, and I said, okay, well, I got a position to question. So I guess none of the electeds are taking a position because it's political football.
Yeah.
And I don't think any other bureaus did. I think housing also punted. But given the fact that it's, an issue related to mental health, disability, as well as people of color who are, just really engaged in being homeless, I said we could take a position. So that was
And will they move your position forward? Will they lobby for that?
I'm not exactly sure of the answer, but I think the answer is essentially yes, that they will now be able to say to those who sponsor the Chip Shields and Lou Fredericks that Office of Equity and Human Rights is a supporter and that will sign on as a supporter of this legislation.
That's good.
I don't think it appears on the legislative agenda.
It does not, that's fine. And I'm still sort of wrapping my mind around how the Office of Government Relations works with each bureau. So like if your office is in support of it in principle and all of that and you weigh in, does it also have to go before their analysis subsequently and then to City Council? Or can you just say as a bureau director, yes, we support this, and then that carries some weight from the City of Portland on its own?
It depends on if the city itself has a position. Because then I don't get to take an alternative position to a city position.
So as long as you're not opposing an existing position, you have some more green light or black, so that's good.
Yeah.
That's great, actually.
Which is why they call because they knew it impacted
Yeah.
the office. So, unusual, but yeah.
So Judith is looking at this and you, has,
Judith responded to them that we would be in support.
okay,
So they have that answer.
great.
And so contact Judith if you want any follow-up with that.
Excellent.
Okay.
And wait, Judith Mowry is a staff member of OEHR, and you can find her on the webpage.
And then finally, maybe the newer folks don't know, and even some of the more seasoned folks don't know. A huge chunk of what my office does is training around equity. And we have we just call it Equity 101, which is a baseline equity training that we provide to employees of the city, as well as those sometimes who are contracting with the city. We provided them for homeless providers who contract with the Housing Bureau. It's a equity baseline on race and disability, more specifically race and disability, with a racial timeline of the history in this country, the state and the city. We talk about implicit bias, we talk about the difference between equality and equity. We provide scenarios so that people can use a set series of questions that they can begin to use sometimes a brand new way of thinking through an equity lens, which is just a critical thinking exercise, and give folks a process by which they can do that. So anyway, I say that to say, I would encourage you to come. They usually are provided twice a month. You can sign, you have to sign up through the city's website, so just call my office and say you would like to come, and we'll just put you on the list. Next one is Friday at 1:30, they're 3.5 hours. Either I, Kenya, or Kofi, or Judith are the facilitators for this. Nobody's up there preaching to you for 3.5 hours. You're doing a whole lot of work in small groups. And I think it would be an excellent opportunity for you to get a sense of at least the city's approach to equity and how the city speaks about equity, specifically racial equity. So,
Can I jump in and make a suggestion? That seems like something that I would imagine we could all just automatically get updates about. Would anybody be opposed to receiving updates about those in their email?
What do we update?
You just invited us about the trainings that are happening.
Does it automatically happen?
you mean the dates?
Yeah, as they come up,
I can send you guys the dates. Right now, the next date is March 6th, March 12th, there'll be one in April on the 3rd, and April 9th. So we can go as far as like May 1st, that's the last one that we have scheduled for that block. But they're happening at least twice per month, and they're at the Portland building.
yeah, so maybe one email with the dates.
So you want
Yeah.
to
Yes,
send the email out first?
Yeah. That'd be great.
It'll come out as it's gonna look sort of like a city announcement.
Yeah.
So do city employees then just like sign on, like do they all have like a calendar year to attend, or is there some sort of, what's the responsibility of the employees to?
Technically, there is no responsibility because it's not a mandated training. And I'm still working on that. Some bureau directors have mandated for their employees, some have mandated for their leadership teams, but no one as
It's not a blanket.
It's not a blanket requirement in the same way, harassment 2.2 is a mandated training for everyone. So it's my expectation to go, as part of the conversation I'm having with each city council person next week when I meet with them, that I'll be taking it to council. Because I can't get the mayor mandated, I can't get HR to say they can do it. So it's like, okay, so I'll take it to council and get it blessed by council that it will be a requirement for all city employees to look at.
Do you also work with organizations besides city employees?
We have done some. It just depends on the organization, but we're kind of particular about it just because of our capacity and timing. But we have done some outside organizations.
Do they pay for that, or is that just a?
I haven't asked them yet. Yeah, I'm thinking about it. Yeah. So, also, just as an FYI, Kenya and Kofi have been doing lunchtime really just discussions, they're not trainings in any shape or form, on most recently microaggressions. And today they did one and had over 40 people sitting there, from the police chief on down, in these conversations. So.
Where do you guys host those?
At the Portland building,
Can I
inside.
send people? I'm just kidding.
Right.
I'm kidding.
We actually had a couple of community members that happened to come in. They were meeting with Deanna, and Deanna told them, "No, I'm on my way to this lunchtime discussion." And she was like, "Why don't you guys come?" So it was about 3 community members who attended today. They seem to enjoy what they seem to know.
I've heard really positive things from people about what you're doing.
Is it an auditorium? Oh, sorry.
No, it's a C. That's a JTTF.
Yes. Since you know the right people, so if you want to go.
Everyone?
No, let's see, the next one is on the 11th.
If you wanted to add that to that email of the trainings, that would be great.
Do you guys provide lunch?
It's a city function, there's no food. You bring your, it's BYOL.
Yeah, Starbucks, leave me on,
There's a mandate for the harassment 2.2, I don't know the exact, but there's not a mandate for the race or disability.
Not yet.
That's what you're trying to get?
Yes.
Is there
Is there a specific reason why harassment takes precedence over race being in the state that Oregon is and all that?
Because of the risk to the city of being sued by not putting people on notice of what is harassment, what is sexual harassment, what is essentially, I mean, it can't be Title VII employment discrimination because the city doesn't do that, Boley does that, but it's along that line. And so it's really a risk rationale to ensure that everybody's on notice that you can't do this or say this to your colleague and get away with it.
But you can discriminate as of now and
Well, but
implicit racial biases and things like that, it's okay? I'm not saying
well,
you,
no,
but.
well, no, because the 2.2 covers the behavior that we're saying we don't want you to do in the equity training. 2.2 covers that. So it's not really mutually exclusive, but we want to give you a baseline of understanding why you shouldn't do the stuff that we're telling you can't do anyway.
Right.
So.
At 2.02, I went through it, but a little mind numbing, but it's basically like broad in scope, all forms of harassment, including racially based harassment, and it's liability focused in my opinion. It comes from like don't hug each other because then somebody witnessing could say that was some form of harassment,
Right.
so it's that kind of stuff.
It's kind of like.
So culturally, it doesn't work for a lot of people, because it's like, if somebody's relative passed and you want to give them a hug because you have a relationship with them, we're not supposed to as city employees.
It's also a requirement from the Bureau of Labor and Industry for industry that is the size of the city. Not only the size, but like I think it's 100 or more employees, it's a requirement.
So you kind of take what you,
Say what you get from it?
yes, try and apply it as.
You better take more than what you get from it.
Well, I'm gonna hug a colleague if something bad happened in their life, so I break that rule, is what I'm saying.
I mean, you can have school.
Because part of 2.0 is about how the people observed in that act feel and they are allowed to also report. So I don't really advocate breaking the rule.
Yeah.
But I think if you're gonna do, you need to be aware of what you're doing and how it might appear to other people.
You're assuming risk when you.
It's just like at school, I gotta give a kid side hugs or a fist bump or.
So as your chair, I want to suggest we can continue this conversation or.
I actually have one
Yeah,
more question for
okay.
Dante. Thank you for just sharing this and what you guys do holistically outside of like being here and helping us every first Wednesday. With regards to this training and this training become specifically, excuse me, Equity 101 or 1.0 or whatever you called it, becoming something that's just kind of a mandated thing or whatever. I guess if there are places or spaces that you feel HRC can also like offer our sign off on, like we believe that this is something that's important, whether it be Equity 101 or Human Rights 101 or all, some of the different trainings that you do start to come about. I guess if there are ways that we can continue to support you through your work and going to Heroes, let us know. Because I think we'd all love to be advocates, there by your side or whatever.
Thank you. Certainly, take the training, then.
Right, go to the training first.
Then when in fact I do take it to council to ask for it to be mandated, I would love your support in that regard.
So everybody get you.
Right.
GRE.
Yeah, the Governing for Racial Equity Conference that we were a host of last year is going to be in Seattle this year, hosted by King County, and we are a sponsor of it along with Multnomah County, San Francisco, City of Seattle, and City of Tacoma.
When is it this year?
It's June, second weekend,
18th.
18th and 19th.
Keeps moving around, huh?
Yeah, so it's 18th and 19th. So it was a phenomenal success last year. Did anybody here last year go? Okay. So it was there were over 500 people from as far away as Boston for a regional conference. So it was a phenomenal success. So the website, I believe, is up, and the registration for that is up.
It's only open right now to government employees.
Right, so it's, I mean, specifically designed for people in government doing equity work. And then, so once that time frame is kind of finished for that first wave of government folks, then they'll open it up to community members who are engaged in doing this work. I forget what the cost is, but I mean, it's part of your budget if you want to. I would certainly suggest you can use your budget to do that. So we can have that conversation if necessary.
Hotel included?
Hotel would have to be included. Okay.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Okay, so we need to do a little budgeting of our own with our time. So let me ask retreat planning people, whoever is in charge of that for today, how much time do you need, would you like?
Not very long, honestly.
So can I also just offer a note, so.
We're waiting for the side conversations.
I'm talking about the conference.
Yeah, I'm gonna go too.
I love y'all for that, but I'm just kidding. So, as you guys know, Rebecca's not here today. We found out in an email that her father passed, and so it's, she's been gone, and obviously that had been, I think everyone knows that had been a reason for her not being at meetings, and that had been a reason for her excused absences, as she primarily was like in the midst of flying back and forth, or just arriving back home when our meetings were happening. So I'd like to just personally probably send a card. Kenya, I think if we were able to, I was able to circulate something. You have an address that you can send it to, or? Okay.
It will go to her. She still works.
But it can get to her, yeah.
State, right? But she still works. I'm
Pretty sure she's with the health.
State.
Yeah.
Office of Equity.
Anyway, so I think it'd be great to send her a card, just with condolences. Pardon me? Yes, thank you. Send a card, but also she was kind of helping to lead a lot of the retreat conversations and such. So I mentioned that because we are at, 3-4 today? And I know our retreat is supposed to happen in March, and I told her in an email that I'd like to just circle back with her, not today, but pretty soon, just to find out where we were, where we still need to be, and to make sure that if retreat does in fact happen, that we're ready to go, and that it's not just kind of thrown together kind of at the last minute, because obviously there's capacity and things like that.
Are you talking about the facility?
Want me to get the card and just HRC and send it to her, or do you guys want to get the card?
Are you guys okay with that, or what would you guys feel?
That's fine.
I don't know how we'd all get together and sign a card unless you're here. Yeah, so I think if you wouldn't mind that, Kenya, that would be great. If anyone, if you want to sign it in particular, maybe you can let Kenya know, but I think if you were able to just send something from the HRC, that would be ideal. And she obviously would welcome an email if that's what you want to do. So anyways, I say all that to say, I literally got that email an hour before the meeting, if even that.
3:30.
So what it.
Okay, yeah, so not an hour before the meeting.
So in terms of our timing and the conversation we need to have for the retreat, what kind of time do we want to give that to today?
Not much, so
Okay.
that's why I led it with that, so that we recognize where we're at and where we're not, because she was helping to lead that
Yeah.
conversation. So we don't need much time in that today outside of, I wanted to alert us to the fact that if we need to move it a little bit farther out, that is something that we propose via an email, so you guys are aware that we might update and say, hey, actual retreat is going to be occurring on set date and time. So I just want you guys to be aware that that may be coming down.
Shabri, are you taking the lead on like how to put the agenda together for the retreat?
She sent out a, Diallo as well. Rebecca helped to send out a survey to make sure that we were hitting what people were interested in hearing and talking about and engaging in. And so she sent us where we are so far. And if you know that you haven't taken that survey, please just pull up her most recent email. I think Amy, you maybe sent, or Diallo, sorry, you were the one who was bumping it.
There were 2 different surveys sent out, because I remember I did one, and there was another one I believe I saw maybe.
I have your
They
response.
sent it twice.
I think it was just like a bump. I think he sent it again.
It was a bump,
Yeah.
yeah. I have your response. Actually, I think everybody in here has responded to it.
Great.
Nice.
Yeah.
Awesome, thank you guys. Okay, so, we'll take that, she sent us that information again at 3:30, so Diallo and myself will go ahead and look at that. I'll connect with her personally and find out what we need to do. I just wanted you guys to be aware, if for some reason we're outside of March, it's just because we want to make sure that the retreat time spent is good. Any
Okay.
questions about that? I mean, since we do have a little bit of time.
Is that retreat
Questions?
planning? Is that retreat planning, or are we gonna go more further?
That's retreat.
I think she just went ahead and did
Okay.
it. So yeah, that sounds like it's complete.
Melissa, do you have any questions about it?
I do, because, so we got the annual report is coming up. Then, so that's gonna happen before or after the retreat.
It was always designed that the report would come out post-retreat, because that would be a time for us to kind of, I think, look at it and connect about it.
Okay, so.
That might need to be negotiated.
And again,
With the new-
I just heard this at 3:30,
But
so.
it wouldn't be the end of, sorry to interrupt you, it wouldn't be the end of the world if they happened in reverse order, in my opinion.
I just have one question, oh, sorry, about the retreat. It didn't mention any possible dates or times.
Yeah, I
So
think
how do we know?
what date or time it will be.
Yeah, how to
I think
plan.
that, so that was a part of what the support was going to be. So we knew we wanted it to happen in March, and, I think that's me offering, if it can happen in March, it will, and if it, obviously it's gonna be super late in March at this point. That's why I said we're at 3-4 already, so having it in March and getting it on people's calendars. I think we always want at least 2 to 3 weeks notice, right, to attempt to capture as much time and space.
For all these.
We're talking about Saturday, I think, right?
Yeah, it's the
Yes.
intent is
And location.
Okay.
Okay,
So
all right,
that's
that's helpful.
way
Yeah,
more-
that's
sorry.
helpful, just.
Yeah.
just
That was a
to
part
know.
of it, so that people could plan
Okay, yeah,
outside of
'cause I
what
did-
typical work
okay. All right,
hour
great.
would be, and we
That's
needed
helpful.
more time. Sorry, we mentioned that before, yeah.
For vendors, I need, at least a week or 2 in advance, because there's a specific kind of invoice.
Yeah.
We still haven't paid the Multi Center, because they won't send us the right invoice. She sent us 3 invoices, I submitted 3 invoices, and 3 invoices have come back.
There's lead time you need.
Yeah, to make sure that we can talk about what their invoices look like when they send it.
So don't forget about the doodle.
No, of course,
Yeah,
yeah,
okay.
yeah. So whatever the date is going to be, it will be at least 3 weeks out from whenever we actually talk about it, folks.
I think.
And on a weekend.
Okay, okay. So that kind of loss is huge, obviously that goes without saying.
Right.
I do not think it's appropriate to expect her to continue at this point with no time to grieve and pick up the pieces.
Yeah.
So I think
Oh,
we
yeah.
should proactively have 1 or 2 people volunteer to fill in as needed and be that person. Because it's, I mean, this, like, organizing a retreat just
Is not-
compared to the
exactly.
loss of a parent.
Okay, which is, so that's what my message right back to her was, don't even worry about it, you and I can connect at a later time to even like touch base on just what do you just wanna hand over, so you don't have to worry about it. Diallo and I, were on that email, I think you were CC'd, maybe I'm wrong, I don't know. But yeah, so if there's someone else who would be interested in kind of stepping in her place, besides Diallo, let us know.
Yeah, just to be clear though, you guys were working as a 3-team rather than her taking the
Yeah.
chair lead of this, right? Yeah, so it wouldn't be that you have to step into the, anchoring all of it, but.
Yeah, it was just, she was doing the initial start.
Yeah.
That
And I
was
think
what
that it would be
was-
okay if new commissioners are interested in doing it too. I don't think it has to just be people.
Yeah, is anyone, who's here right now interested in kind of,
I'll fill in for her just because that's,
is he, yeah.
yeah.
I appreciate that.
loss, so.
I appreciate that, Ashley.
Yeah.
Okay, so I'll just include you.
Okay.
Thank you, Ashley.
I'm just gonna say that Ashley's joining the retreat planning team.
Okay, anything else about the retreat? All right, so I'm gonna suggest that we shoot for 15 minutes of executive committee and staff report, and then 15 minutes for HRC meeting design stuff. Sound good? Okay, executive committee stuff, actions taken. We did a JTTF, we did an open letter to city council around the Joint Terrorism Task Force decision. We made a vote on that, that endorsed Amy and Diallo to write that to city council, encouraging that they not vote to continue partnership with the JTTF. And I want to share a little bit about the communications that happened with that, because I think as we're moving forward and learning better how to be influential with that body, it might be interesting. And so Diallo got us moving forward with some great spirit with it and some starting language. And then I helped complete a full draft letter to all commissioners in Hales. And we had more time. And initially we learned that we had more time because the vote wasn't happening until a week and a half or 2 weeks later. And so that kind of thing was supportive for me to understand, and the way I tend to keep track of that for police matters is I'm on the cop watch list. Cop watch listserv. So that listserv tends to be really reliable in terms of what's happening in terms of logistical scheduling changes with city council, just as information for those of you working on this in the future. So the letter was written and I sent it directly to council in Hales, and it went midday because of my scheduling, my tight frame of schedule. It went the Wednesday before the Thursday vote, midday. So my concern that it wouldn't be read led me to make some phone calls to every office, all 5 offices. And I was received really well by those staff people. There was a couple of folks that I called directly because I knew them and had a relationship of some sort with them. And, but regardless, I was always confirmed that I'm gonna slide this into his or her folder for reading this afternoon. And I was told I'm gonna make sure that this will be read. So I hadn't ever experienced that before. I think I never tried the phone call, but I think folks were really glad to hear from us. I got some feedback, thank you for sending this. This was a pretty high stakes decision.
Yeah.
I received a note back. It was a form letter back from from Fish. It sounds like he responded to everybody who gave opinion about this. I did hear that Fritz read part of the letter during the hearing. She also read part of ACLU's letter during the hearing. So I'm really encouraged by that. I think beyond, the content of the letter, it's symbolic to how we are being received with those folks, some of those folks. And I guess that's all I need to say about that. You guys should have gotten a copy in your inboxes about the letter. And in the end, they voted to join.
Yeah.
I do believe that the Hale's decision was difficult for him. And Novik and Fritz were the only 2 no's.
And I think what you're saying is so important in terms of having that phone call and that relationship. And I remember a couple of meetings ago, there was some discussion about, and I'm assuming that would, in fact, that's one of the things I'd like to see in the retreat agenda, but that we identify a human relations commissioner, a human rights commissioner for each city commissioner, so that then when something comes up, you don't have to call 5 people. We've developed a relationship with our, whoever our city council person is gonna be, and let them know, we sent a letter, we wanna make sure you saw it, we'll get to know their chief of staff and their contact person. I think it really makes a difference, because that becomes then the extra lobbying for, the position that we've taken in a letter. And then, because a lot of times they go in there, they haven't fully been briefed on votes, and so I think it can make a difference.
Yes, so setting up liaison
Yeah.
relationship is something we've been working on, and it's just been a matter of time and our capacity.
Yeah, I just would like to do that at the retreat. I think that's
Yeah.
something we could do.
It's on the,
Okay.
what are we
Yeah.
doing for?
And also,
Yes,
just
thank you.
because there's turnover in the commission too, those liaisons before they leave should also be helping
Yeah.
new commissioners with the relationship as well, whether they go to a meeting with the commissioner that will replace them
Yeah.
or what, because.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
I know we'll talk about this, but one quick thought I just had is, never mind.
Say it.
I'll save it. I'll save it.
It was a great letter also.
Okay.
It was
Just write it
really-
down.
It was really a good letter. I felt very proud to be part of it.
Just a quick point. I know that Dale, I think you mentioned something about them possibly repealing the decision, or has there been any movement to?
You're good.
The next thing they're gonna vote on, as far as I understand, is the contract, so the details of it, which gave folks the notion that they could reverse course, and I think Copwatch put out a statement to them, please reverse course. Whether or not that's a real possibility, I can't say.
You know what's interesting, I think with even the last open letter that we did, against the appeal decision for the DOJ settlement, there was also some is there movement there? Is there a way to reverse that request initially as well? And I think just in general, as we're talking about stuff in the retreat, what it looks like to send that, and then if we recognize that there is in fact room for some sort of reversal, or whatever, what does that look like for us to continue that work outside of that open letter, right? My suggestion would be obviously at the request for our next meeting, and really asking just that straight up one question: how do we help you reverse this decision or change this decision?
Because they obviously can.
Yeah,
Right,
and so
you
we've
guys did all
heard that
that
recently.
great work, so.
Well, and we kind of heard this before with Fritz and her capacity and what she wanted to do based upon the appeal before.
Right.
So I think it would just be good for us holistically, as we're talking about work that we're doing, that it doesn't end with just an open letter. And what does, once we've sent that letter, what are the next steps? What do those next steps look like? Because then maybe it's not like a second open letter, but what does it actually look like outside of just continuing to send dissent and then continuing to be denied? I think we should move it past just a letter, right?
Absolutely.
Which the liaison relationship there would help,
Yeah.
because then we'd have a personal contact. I would say, gee, I'd like to see more of this or that, or whatever.
It's a really good point.
One last question, which is, it's really helpful to know the process that you go
Yes.
through to do this.
Yeah.
And it would be really nice, would it be possible to just give a little bit of a description, like if we wanted to do this again, here are a couple of things that we need to know that we could all have access to.
orientation.
So actually, is the Pam,
Still got
wasn't
it.
Pam in that
It
orientation?
wasn't for distribution. You guys-
We can
Or
distribute
done
that,
it.
it's for distribution internally. Yeah, so
So there is a PAM, there's what does it stand for?
process action model.
That essentially is that. It's big and it's wiry, but there is a
If
flow
this, then
through.
this, if that, then that,
Right.
and visually follow the pathway.
So there is one of
Okay, all right, yeah, I guess what I'm interested in
those. Is having.
is just like what you did, which was a very short narrative on what you did that worked. And like the tip of making phone calls, and that we need to get that in by this amount of time. Just a little bit of narrative on that would be kind of a great collective knowledge for us to have for planning future actions.
So I want to interject, so when Amy and I joined this body, there was no process action model, anything, any guidance, and so
Which is
we
great.
met outside of these meetings to try and develop something, then Amy took the lead after that point and worked with the group, and so what we have is a pretty good visual for like how you actually, depending on what sort of action you want to take or what you've been requested to do, what pathways you have available to you. So I think that you need that like right now to better understand
Okay.
what it is that we're
Again,
talking
is
about.
there a place where we can get that collected information that we could all have access to? Like, again, I'm thinking, similar to kind of like what's been done, that we could all be able to consult it, to know, okay, here's a collection of
Stuff you should know.
information
Yeah.
that, if we want to find stuff, we could find it, maybe online.
I really feel like we need a drive, but since that's not
It's all,
really allowed.
so the PAM is not online because it wasn't out there, but, the place where you'll collectively find stuff that's been done is on the website. And you'll find the old,
Stuff that's been produced.
yeah.
Right, but I
You're
mean,
like-
Your
like-
internal, like
Yeah.
internal functions and stuff.
yeah,
So
like,
that should be.
for example, that document.
Yeah.
Or we should have like maybe a central location where our binders are, so that we can, in those binders, be updated throughout.
Can't we do like a main site?
Any site that you do has to be public.
Even
And
if it's
open
just for structure, format,
I don't.
Google
again,
Drive
this is
can
why-
be-
Everything that we do is.
Google Drives can be open to the public. You can have a Google Drive on the website and people can access and see it.
Right. So to quickly resolve
We
this,
don't
I think
use
we can just get you
It's a
this
link.
model document, and I think there are orientation binders, and we can just look, I haven't seen them for a long
They
time
have
since I
done
came on
the
board.
orientation with them, and I think they're waiting for,
Was the PAM in this?
no.
How can we be an independent body without just being able to have a link?
Yeah, so we're moving into 3 conversations at once right now. And so let's focus on the one that we started, which was your request to better understand the process by which we do things. And I'm hearing you say internally plus how do we dance with the outside folks that we want to. So I like what Ashley's saying, and let's make sure that you get the PAM, that people get the PAM. And then we can work on the other, making it more accessible later.
Well, and I think, just Ashley mentioned that when they came in, there wasn't a PAM, they helped put it together. I would say to all new folks, and myself included, just folks, if there's something you don't see, we're all volunteers, so it's something that we can all put in together. If you see that there's a hole, let's definitely all talk about like how do we make it happen. Because there's not, outside of Kenya, who's staff, none of us, this is not our day job for, and they help put that together. So yes, let's get you the PAM, let's talk a bit about it. I think it may be on the retreat stuff in some way, shape or form. And then let's really talk about what does it look like to have an online space and place for that, knowing that it needs to be, let's just kind of pro and con or whatever we have to do to get it done.
I think with that, you raise a good point, because I asked the same thing when I first got on, because I thought it would be helpful to me. It's like where we've been and where we're going, and what is the process on how we do things. If we can, whatever, I don't know if it's in our binder or not, but that is super important. I asked for that, and I really wanted and needed that, along with business cards and all the other stuff that requests that everybody had come. But it only helps you, it only helps us, so when you leave or when we leave, the people who are coming after us have the same information, because I had no clear idea of what I was doing or where I was going, and now I do, like a year and something later, but it's just my way of, being appointed to boards, and if we're gonna be stronger, if we're gonna move forward, if we're gonna really build peace and indiscrimination, then that's something that we have to do.
We
Because
can't
we're
be
leading,
effective unless
we're not.
Well, and also I think, from my point of view, we're also learning how to be advocates,
Mhm.
right? And also what the different methods are for actually, affecting change. So, that's new to me, but that's also kind of building the knowledge base of what we could do.
Yeah.
And I would just add that, to kind of close it, and thank you for bringing those points up, because when he asked for it, I came and I asked for it. I think you guys came and were probably like, where the heck, and you just put your foot into it and got it done. I think as, one of the things at retreat is talking about expectation that we hold ourselves, that we all hold for each other, and I think one of those things will in fact be that we come in, we are community leaders in our own right, but we come in knowing that we are literally going to have to build things from scratch, and hopefully it makes it easier for the next person coming, right? And so if we just come in with that hat on, because I came looking like, hey, you guys, where is it? And everybody was like, okay, it's either here because some people actually did it, or we're still trying to make it happen. So it's a good thing to talk about, it's a good thing to continue to bring up, and I think just as we're wearing those hats of, you don't see it, make it happen kind of thing, so.
And
Yeah.
I came in like, where is it, you guys? What is it? I'm new to this body as well. I came in with an expectation that there was an orientation that people were able to go through and get information that they needed, and that there was an archive of the who you are, what you do. And so the orientation that I gave you guys was something that nobody else got. None of the other guys that came here got that orientation, but I can't give you that full and absolute orientation because I'm just about as new as you guys are. So there's a second piece of orientation that hasn't come from the body that hasn't been developed yet. And I feel like you keep asking for it, but if it doesn't exist,
I think
we need to find a way.
yeah, I think it's kind of building an archive, you know, a collected place to keep information as we're building it, that we all know where to look. You know, I think that's part of the, I mean, I agree that we might need to build that. But since there are pieces in place, having some centralized location to know where to find what already does exist
Yep.
would be
Yeah.
great.
I
Yeah.
hear you.
And when
I'm
you have
gonna-
a staff, like, and you're managing this, I mean, she's gonna have the internal functioning documents on her drive. And so, you know, she's gonna be the holder of that. It's not gonna be online because it's how we make decisions. I mean, I'm not opposed to putting that PAM online, but I get that it's not like a revolutionary document for other people to see how we make our internal decisions.
So I need to move us on.
Thanks for bringing that up, though. That's
Yeah.
nice to talk
But
about.
if they get the payment, I think they need somebody that can sit down with them and.
Right, right, so
If we can
that,
just share it with them, because I think you guys are also
So is that your
super
next
smart.
topic, Amy?
yes,
Okay, why don't we talk about it?
Yes.
thank you. This does move us on to orientation and needs, and because we don't have much time at all to address that, what I want to suggest is we collect our thoughts for the larger orientation needs and bring that to the retreat conversation. In short, we want to have Kenya be providing an orientation and then HRC providing an orientation. So what needs to happen in those two events? And then I want to ask right now, is there anything new members need that you're not getting? And we want to make a suggestion that there be mentor relationships set up for you guys immediately so you can have access to somebody specifically that you need. That could help you. Okay, so what if we do it this way? Pick somebody after the meeting and approach them and ask them if they would mentor you forward for an agreed upon time frame. And is there anything else you need immediately?
Business cards, are we supposed to get business
Yeah.
cards? When you say that, Emanuel, it's like, somebody asked me last night at Race Talks if I had a card, and I didn't. I had to write my name down on a little piece of paper, and I thought, this is a human rights commissioner writing her name down on a little piece of scrap
Okay,
paper?
let's let Kenya speak.
So last week, that's month I brought the business cards and I left them out. I don't know, some people took some. But
Okay.
what you guys will have is you guys will have a commission business card, not an individual business card, because it would cost the city, the commission, a lot of money to keep making business cards for 15 people who rotate as frequently as you guys do. And I always have a business card, so if you need more business cards, I can give you a lot of business cards whenever you want.
The suggestion that we made about business cards previously, though, was to have a space on the back where we could write our own name, so you could print the same business card every time, and we would be able to, because people aren't gonna wanna contact you. If we're making a contact with somebody, then they probably wanna talk to us to continue that dialogue and that conversation. So there should be a blank back, not a full back that we can't write anything on anywhere.
So we just ordered a bunch more.
Yeah.
So I got two
We have to
full
use them up.
boxes of the old business card. What Jeff did was he just changed the phone number. So all the calls will come to me. And I guess I'm supposed to parse the calls back out to you somehow. But I understand what you're saying. So when the next order comes up, what I'll do is I'll draw a new one up and ask them to leave a blank phone number space and a blank name.
Yeah.
And it's not really that expensive.
You just need some white space, actually.
Yeah.
I mean, because I think a standard phone number makes.
Yeah, so before we get too much in the weeds about the cards.
You just need white space, guys.
One statement I want to take my time.
Just-
On the business cards, I think having that little space for a name and phone number, but also making sure that we have the definition of what the Human Rights Commission is, because when we are out in the public and we can't speak on behalf, we can always say, well, as David Isaiah Turner, the Human Rights Commission, blah, 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 blah. And I know that has been super helpful to me when I pass them out, when folks have asked me, what does the Human Rights Commission do, or what do you think about this? And I can read that statement without getting into a bunch of trouble saying some stuff that I believe in, that necessarily we possibly don't believe in.
Right.
So, yeah, I think we already know we have a whole bunch that are coming up that are I don't even know what the old one looks like because I didn't pick up any. I have my own cards. I usually just pass out my own personal card, but I think what we know we need is just some straight up white space. Wherever it is, however it looks, I think it's important to have a basic phone number so that if it isn't something that we know to refer to, that they have a number. Just some white space so we can jot down a quick name and phone number is all we need if there is really a direct one-on-one conversation that should continue.
All right, let's
Has
move
it at the
on.
back?
That is what we have now, more of.
So there's a little white space.
It's got that ball.
There's room.
It's got this on there.
The mission, I think.
I think having the mission is
So you've got
important.
some of those?
Yeah, just.
Okay, I'll get
Okay, I'm gonna move us on, because we are really running out of time for what we need to do next. Committee updates, is a process, part of the process that Shabri suggested a bit ago about providing pre-reads to commissioners so we can do more conversation about really important things like what our business cards are gonna look like. And so this is a soft launch of this because Suzanne asked specifically that y'all receive an update from our HRTF this month. So what you see here is a mini version of this. You all were not asked to do this, but the idea is that a week before these meetings, the chair of every committee or their designated person is responsible for providing Kenya the updating information about what's happening with the committee, who's the contact person, when are your regular meetings, and ideally we get that eventually to the webpage so people have access to that publicly. So what I wanted to do today was to get your feedback about this format. So we perhaps have time for one or two comments about that. Anything glaring about this format that does or doesn't work? Yeah.
These should be the same, so like the chairs should be able to have regular meetings, and they should have the times as well.
So
There should be a format for each one.
Right, so I think that, the impetus behind this, and again, thank you for saying soft launch, was just for me as a new person, I was like, what the heck is happening? I can't make it to all the meetings. Is there a way for us to pre-read? Because we all serve on other boards and we know that there are more efficient ways. And so I think from a format perspective, and is this, Kimmy, something I share with you?
It was Amy's format.
No, this was not my format.
Not the first one, the second one.
Okay, well, so.
The first one is-
So collectively what we need, I'm just gonna move us forward. Collectively what we need is chair and contact information. We need meeting date and time. And if there is a current project or invite out to something, or if there's just some basic information, this is really a place for me to say, okay, I'm not on the HRTF, but I'd love to just have a basic, what are you guys doing?
Yeah.
If you're not up to anything new, or it's the same as what it was before, then leave it as it was previously. And so there's really like 4, maybe 5 pieces of information. And that 5th would be, is there an invite out to, is there like something coming up,
Yeah.
right? Do we have an HRTF,
Something needs
Something,
action,
something,
something
something.
needs input from the
right,
board.
Yeah.
just a basic one-hit thing that we're aware of, and then we can make this public as well, so it starts to kind of develop around
Yeah,
what we're
I think
talking
that's
about.
great.
Yeah, it really helps.
Just
Can
a
I
really
step
quick
back
thing.
in? Chair or contact person, meeting date and time, action requested, what was the
Just a general update. Like, yeah, sorry, no, it,
So
Yeah,
I think,
so this, like,
I
this
think
first
that, that
one
first
almost-
one, which is what I provided, is what covers it.
except for we'd have,
Just add an action need
Yeah,
section,
exactly.
but everything else is perfect.
And action needed if there is any.
What's that, the top one?
that time?
That's because I got the name.
Okay.
Actually,
It was
the,
different than.
And then the bottom one is because Kyle, that's what Kyle sent us.
Oh, the box one was.
The bottom there.
in the main
At the bottom.
policy, it's just the purpose of it.
Right, so the difference is that they listed the membership.
I'm actually staying out of it at this
Do
point.
you guys want the whole membership listed?
No, because again, this is just a quick update. I mean, I think that there's probably another place. Yeah.
Chair, contact person,
Mhm.
meeting time and date, action requested, and updates.
That sounded like more than.
And then action.
It's action items if anything and basic update, right?
Yeah,
And
In the
current
regular
projects
meeting
is
time.
cool, current projects is cool if you want to list it there. That might be something that stays the same for an entire year, right? If it's still something that's ongoing. Really, this is just, again, us to know what the heck
it's
we're
up
all
to
doing.
the chair, the committee chair to determine if they want to put out a call for action or if they need somebody to table or
Yeah.
something like that.
So current projects is gonna be optional, that's up to you guys if you wanna do it, if you wanna put it in there, because it could be the same for a year or two.
I think it's good to have a space for it.
Yeah, so
Yeah.
I think there
Yeah,
are
I
5
think
spaces for information, and
yeah.
you fill them in as you would like. If you don't fill
Yes.
them in, then don't expect any action behind what would have been there.
Right,
Mhm.
but the template would note it, and then you'd know, oh, there's no action, the housing committee doesn't need anything from us
Right.
this month, yeah, that's,
Yeah. How likely is there recent action with what you fill in?
I mean, so this is the thing, this is meant to be a pre-read, right? And so what I guess would also occur is in the midst of our agenda for our meeting, we can say, or that chair can say, hey, not only did I submit a pre-read, but there's this action that I like to bring up at the meeting. So because, do you remember before, we had that whole list of every single committee, and it was like we go over what's happening at JTTF, we go over what's happening in policy, and sometimes there's either nothing, or it was simple enough or long enough that it would have been nice to have something like this. So this is a way of us not having to go through a list.
To make this meeting more efficient.
Exactly.
yep,
Yes.
Yeah.
That was what.
So if people have questions about what's in that update, they need to contact the person who sent the update. In the
Which is why the
it could be via
contact, the
email.
name and contact
Yes.
Just
info is
to
to
be,
be.
Yeah.
to
Yeah.
contact them, right, via the email or whatever during that week of time,
Yes.
you got like a week to do it in. And then when we get to the meeting, we can go straight to the actions requested.
Good point.
yeah.
Yep,
yeah.
and then if Diallo read
Yeah, that's
something, if you have a question about it, or you pre-read it and you have a question, if you didn't, here's the other thing, we're all adults, if you did not pre-read it, then that's on you. And you might just be
Yeah.
asking your questions there in that place, in that
That's good.
space.
That's
It's just,
fair.
yeah, it's just, go for it, prosper.
Anything else about these pre-reads?
Me too.
Oh, good, yay, yay, Shabri idea.
Yeah.
Okay, I want to suggest that we stay for 10 more minutes beyond, until 6:40 to complete the things that are left. Does anybody have a concern about staying? Thank you. Let's move on to executive committee elections. Alan's in charge.
So as Amy indicated, her term as HRC chair will end in April, and so we will elect new officers at the April meeting. So we'll have elections at the April meeting. So per the bylaws, what that means is 1 month prior to the elections, we open the nominating period, which should be referred to as the nominating meeting, which shall be this meeting. So this meeting shall be referred to as the nominating meeting. Nominations are open for the positions of chair and vice chair. We did previously open nominations in November, and then it was postponed until this time. And so the executive committee talked about the fact that we will honor the nominations that came forward in November. Oh, I packed all my stuff up. But I think I remember. That's what I had that out for.
It was really
Great.
extensive,
My
guys.
whole spiel. So the nominations for chair at that time were Shabri. Oh, sorry.
So,
The election in April, will that be to fill out the term until November, and then November elections is normal?
I
Or is
think
it
we have
a year
to
from
talk
April?
about that. That's a good point, because so what did we decide that, I have to go back and look, did we decide terms will run October to October or calendar year? October. Okay. So what would we like to do? Would we like to elect the chair for the period from April to October 31st? I think that probably makes sense to me. And then hold elections again in October.
Yeah.
Okay.
With the nominating month then being September.
Elections
Plan
would be in October to start your term in November. So the nominating meeting would be the meeting prior to that, which would be September.
Okay. That's what I was going to say. Sorry, thank you. Is that it?
So that's what it'll be. So these nominations will be for terms to begin, and so we'll have the election in April and the term will begin in April. So sometimes it doesn't work like that, but this one it will. So you'll take office in April, those that are elected, and again, the nominations that came forward were read for chair, and then there were nominations for vice chair, but those folks who were nominated have declined the nominations, and so there are no current nominations for vice chair. Nominations will open right now at this meeting, and so we can take any right now, and they will remain open until we vote at the next meeting. So you can nominate people by email. I would say contact Amy probably, if you have nominations, or if you have nominations this evening, then you can bring those forward at this time.
Do we have any nominations tonight? Is anyone ready to offer one tonight? Okay.
All right, nominations shall remain open until the voting meeting, which will be the meeting in April, at which time we will elect a new chair and vice chair and replace Amy at that meeting. And Shabri, right? Shabri's the current vice chair.
Thank you, Ellen. Well done, I'm
That's
so glad
process.
you're on top of that part. Okay, can we do a brief report on the race talks and the Jewish Federation of Greater Portland? And then what we have left to do is talk about HRC meeting design, and Suzanne has a proposal.
Is Race Talks me? Or Sam's not here anymore? Where's
Oh, Sam there.
Is Sam gone?
Thank you, Sam.
Scratch that.
Well, we can offer it because we were just there.
Or two people.
I've got the,
He's in with Andre.
What?
They both left.
Dante's on,
Okay, so Race Talks are occurring. The next one is happening April 7th, I believe. We can find that out. Yeah, the Race Talks 2, actually, let me clarify, there's a Race Talks in general. Race Talks 2 is kind of a spin-off that's specifically wrapped around police and police accountability. And we have been requested to support by way of being facilitators for breakout discussions that occur at those. Both Marcia and I facilitated yesterday. We both facilitated at the first one, along with Amy, Sam.
Emanuel showed up.
Emanuel was there, Damon was there also. So first off, if you're interested in coming to facilitate, you're literally helping to facilitate a conversation. You don't need to be an expert in that. You simply need to be able to facilitate a conversation. And then obviously, your expertise or whatever it is that you hold as a person is also great and an added bonus.
this is for Race Talks too, or for Race?
This is Race Talks 2. And I think you can go to her website to find more information on dates and times and things like that. Does she have a website? Does she have a website? Oh, okay.
You can sign up, there's a listserv you can sign up for.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Google Donna Maxey, and you'll be
and I
able to.
think that we had decided to put the notes on our website from the race talks. When she was gonna do the summaries of the discussions, she was gonna put them on the CPRC and.
I should have emailed, and she's sending those appropriate. And if she's continuing to send them to me, please putting them on the
Okay.
CPRC's section of the OEHR
Yeah.
HRC website.
Right. Okay.
Right, which is I think the place that they probably go. So yeah, the invite is there. I think for the next piece you asked about.
Can I ask one question?
Oh, yeah. I'm
So the
sorry.
race, the race talks too, is there an sort of actionable agenda items, or is it similar in model that the focus or intent of people coming together is to build understanding and all of
Yeah.
that?
It's far as I know, that's exactly what it is, and it's been about, and I would say that they've been beneficial, right? I think many people are having conversations, it's all about building relationships, and so that's happening. I think we can continue to ask Donna and, you know, is there something outside of this, or is there an outside goal? I don't know if anyone else knows if there's a goal outside of race talks that is just having this conversation.
I mean, a lot has been, I mean, the police have been really well represented at these, and I think they're like being mandated by the chief to go.
Yes, or at least that's in the process.
They're definitely sending, you know, so, I mean, and it isn't a project, as I understand it, the CPFC. So,
So attend, yeah, if you can. And then the other piece that we were gonna talk about was.
The Jewish Federation here in
Oh,
Portland.
thank you. So I think myself and Alan and, did you receive one?
Yeah.
I don't know who all, we all did? Okay, so did we all get this? Yes?
Mm-hmm.
Okay,
I think it was just
The
exactly.
people
Oh.
who they knew, yeah.
okay. Yes, so it looks like the request here is to be available on the 16th and to help out by reading names out loud for 10 minutes sometime during the day.
Well, I did this 2 years ago, or a year ago, I don't remember. Did anybody else do this before?
Kyle has.
Kyle has, shall I jump in and say what I know?
If you want, I literally read this as I got here, and I wanted to
Yeah,
make
it
sure we
might
talked
be
about it.
helpful. So Emily Gottfried, did they change the name of that organization? It seems like it was a different organization name, but Emily Gottfried, who used to be a commissioner, led this initiative to commemorate Holocaust victims once a year. And when I showed up, they did it in Pioneer Square, under a little tent. And she just organized a number of people from city commissioners and us to organizational leaders to simply read the names of victims of the Holocaust for about 10 minutes, and then somebody would come and replace you. It was a very poignant, emotional, and important experience for me. So I encourage anybody who wants to respond. And if you didn't get a letter, I think you'd still be welcoming and interested.
I did not get a letter, I'm going to the list.
Yeah, I would just borrow the list.
Yeah, you can go on mine, because I don't know if I'm gonna do it.
Yeah,
I'm not available Thursday, so
yeah.
especially not training.
Or you can, and ask me, we can get you in touch.
April 16th.
April.
April 16th from
10 a.m.
to 5.
10 to 5.
We'll continue approximately.
Square.
That Pioneer Square. So it sounds like it's very similar. So I guess the quick question is, A, is anyone interested in being a part of it?
I would do that.
You would like to do that?
I will
Ashley?
if I can, if I can schedule it.
Okay.
Yeah.
I need to verify that.
So why don't you write the time down and then get back to,
I would say just go direct to them.
do they have that information there?
Her email address?
Perfect. So we'll share this, you have it with you.
Can I have this, Dean?
Yeah.
Okay.
Okay. So just, and when you do reach out to her, can you let her know that we talked about it at HRC and you're
Yeah.
coming as an HRC member?
Yeah.
And that you look forward,
Yeah.
so as long as you let that, then she knows that it's at least been read, responded to, and that we are looking forward to supporting her by way of showing up. And then if you guys wouldn't mind maybe CCing either Amy or myself, just so we know that we have it covered, that there's someone who's at least going to be there.
I will update you.
Thank you. I think that is all I have on this.
So, I'm sorry, Suzanne, we have a few minutes.
That's okay.
To
It's
look
not like
into your,
7.
the meeting, 7?
You said we're gonna go through
6:40.
My part was going at 6:50.
Whichever, go ahead, I'm sorry, I'm stop talking.
Yeah.
Do you want to just dive in?
Yeah, I just have a quick proposal, which is that I noticed that on our agenda, we have public, the space for public comments kind of, I don't know, halfway down the meeting. And it seems like part of the purpose of having the public meetings is to be an ear to the public. So my suggestion is that we move the public comment time up to right after the approval of the agenda. So that gives any public, people who come here, the opportunity to be heard. There's a lot of business that we conduct that seems like if they want to stay and listen to it, fine. But this would kind of be considerate to the public who are coming, who want to read a statement. The second thing is that some people may want to comment on things that we've discussed. So we could also open up a closing remarks for anybody who wants to make any last comments that could include the public. So for people who want to stay and have something to say about stuff we've discussed, we could also have that time for them too. To offer any thoughts. But it just seems to me like, since we are, we can decide the agenda as, why not make it so that it focuses on public commentary first?
I would disagree with you on changing the time of the comments, because I actually think that for general public, putting it around the 5 o'clock or after 5 o'clock mark is more useful to the public, because there may be many people who cannot show up here at 4 o'clock. For instance, if I were not part of this commission and I was at my job, which, on a normal day I might try to leave at 5 o'clock, it would be way more feasible for me to come and make public comments after 5 o'clock.
I absolutely agree, except she also added at the end for there to be space for people to talk to.
So 2 sections of public comment?
Sure, what you're proposing is 2 sections of public comment.
Well, one is kind of like, if you have a statement to read, there's the formal time, right? And so, anybody who signs up, we do that first. And then the thing at the end would be more like if somebody wants to comment informally on anything we've discussed, that would be in the closing remarks.
We've gone back and forth on this since I arrived. And so I don't think personally that there's any hurt.
Oh, sorry, you can see that? Sorry. Oh, okay, this is the first time I've seen it. I'm like, we're about to be melted by all the birds, yeah. Sorry, guys. It was like squirrel moment, but I was like, do you guys not see this? Like, it's still got 1,000 birds.
Pro stuff in downtown.
Yeah.
Yes, okay, sorry, go ahead.
Okay, sorry.
Creepy.
Sorry about that.
Yeah, you're okay. Good. Keep going.
Yeah. So I don't think that there's any magic, perfect way to do this. It's just a matter of where do we want to give priority for the goal, which I hear is give the public the most access to our ears, right? So that's all.
I think in terms of accessibility to the public, there are basic like environmental justice, human rights, involvement principles that say you shouldn't hold public meetings before close of regular business so that people could access it and get there from their jobs. So along that vein, I think it's good that we have it, after 5 if possible, so people can get here. If people, I'm almost inclined to sort of like pilot one way and ask the public what they prefer, those who come, like, does this work better for you? Or would it work better if we put it towards the front of the agenda? Can you get here? But I get, like, if this meeting started at 5:30 in general, I would say, yes, let's move it towards the top of the agenda. But because we start early and a lot of people can't come early and get off, if they're not even volunteers in the body, they're just coming to share some comments and maybe listen, I think we should keep it closer to like after 5.
Well, then, just a question on that. Why do we start it at 4 rather than 5?
I asked that one. I think it's because of support and the space that we utilize and it going later.
Do you know about that, Kenya?
I only know what I inherited, which
Which
is
is
that
4 to 6:30.
4 to 6:30 because the staff person is here.
So,
And because the doors lock at 5, so it doesn't make sense for the staff person to leave and then come back or to have some other extension of the day.
Okay.
Especially if we're gonna be doing.
So I think we can kind of maybe just talk about that at retreat too, like what are the pros and cons of moving and
Yeah.
changing, and if there is something, we can talk to Dante and I can actually get, if there is if doors being locked is literally something that maybe we have a designated person that will be the eye on the door that can go help or something. So, but I do,
It would be a person who has to open the bottom.
the bottom door is locked.
The door man leaves at 5 too.
That
So
door.
then-
So how do people get in here to get to this meeting? If they show up after 5, can they even get into it?
They usually kind of Trojan horse other people in as they can. And Peacock has a real problem with starting
Yeah.
an hour after we do because Their people have waited outside for hours. And somebody's, like their staffer is usually available to run back and forth to get them in. But we can't control, OEHR can't control the building because we are renters in this building. So with the city, this isn't the city's building, we can't just call facilities and say, leave the door unlocked. And so there's someone who actually has a residence on the 13th floor, and that person is very much opposed to leaving the doors open after 5. And so that resident on the 13th floor has a tremendous amount of power here. So I don't know if that person owns the building or if, you know, what's going on, but they do have huge say in what happens.
That's the information. So just to bring it around, first of all, thank you, Suzanne, for thinking about those things, and we totally hear you. And I think when I first came here, I was also like, look at the public, we should talk to them first. So 2 things. I think we've just kind of talked about the fact that maybe a 5 p.m. time, and I think one of the things that holds true is that we usually, if we try not to move something out or push it later, it's usually public comment is always as close to that 5-10 time slot. Like that's the one thing that we try not to move or try to move stuff after, as we did with like Dante. So I think if we make it just a holistic thing that we try to stick to that 5-10 time period for that first time certain, I think offering a kind of reflection time before we adjourn is totally, I think we're all okay with that. And then the other caveat is that if somebody really wants to come and offer something early on, they can request from a commissioner, hey, can you get me some time certain on the agenda? And they can, if it needs to be earlier, if they feel like it needs to happen earlier, and we can deal with that as we build our agenda. It's kind of like Irene did, right? That was super last minute, and it was like a 2-minute time slot. But if we know, or you know of a person that says they really want to come in and offer this, we can look at what's next time. We can talk with exec committee on like, let's get them a specific time.
Or maybe on the time sheet, the sign-up sheet, we could say, do you need to do this by a certain time?
Because this is a proposed agenda every time, which we have to vote on.
Well, as somebody who's been facilitating, that would be tricky for me to know what's being written down there. I would suggest that instead that they contact us at least 3 days beforehand or something. If they want
time before 5:10. 5:10 is still, again,
right.
It's in the middle of the meeting, it's after 5 p.m. So I think we leave that as is, offer maybe a reflections time if you're feeling like you're.
And can I just say, there was one other part of the proposal, which is that, you know, it looks like we don't usually have that many people.
It changes.
So sometimes we don't have a lot, but, you know, as space is available, why don't we invite people to join us at the table? Why do we have an audience that's separate?
I don't think that's a good idea, because I think that gets confusing. Because then if we're calling for a vote on something, then it's like we're not inviting people to vote. I think it's really not a good idea to mix it.
I love where your heart is.
Yeah, I do too.
Yeah.
And as facilitator, this is a wild meeting to facilitate, right? And it would be pretty challenging to look through and identify who's here, who's not here as a member, and then to go through the process that we need to if there's other folks at the table. That's my expectation.
Can I offer one thing as well, that I definitely appreciate the audience space, because I know that there are some people who do not want to. There are many people who literally come and sit in the back, and that's what they like to do, and that's kind of what they prefer to do. So I'd like us to keep that space for folks who maybe feel that. But I think one thing that we can do is allow for the space where the audience is to, like if someone wants to approach when they're having their, and I think we offer this every time when you offer your public comment, to come up kind of like we did with Cameron, to say, please come up to the table and talk with us during those conversations. And then I also think, darn it, I totally lost my other train of thought. Oh, one of the things that I heard that we used to do was that we would hold this meeting in different places across the city.
So
which then, if we are holding it at a place where there's either a strategic partner or a partner that we want to let them know that we feel that we're right in line with what they're doing, then maybe at that place and time, we can then invite, say, chair of whatever that committee, that group, that executive director, however it might be, say we're a CIO, right? And Casey Jama or one of his folks would like to sit as a guest of tonight, of our meeting tonight. Maybe that's something that we can look into. I heard that we used to do that.
I think it's a great idea.
Yeah,
I haven't been to one, but I've heard that we did that, and that might be kind of
That was an initiative that we did a lot of work on it, and for example, Alan did out in East Portland event. And that would be a good solution for us to dedicating more, even larger hunks of time for certain meetings, maybe quarterly meetings, to more public input in general.
I heard something different from Shabri. What I heard Shabri say was inviting a special guest or
Right.
creating a seat at the table for.
Well, for that meeting, so if we were gonna host it at CIO, right, like if the CIO wanted to say, Human Rights Commission is hosting their meeting at the table, they want to either update us kind of on what they're doing, or share with us what they're doing. And Suzanne, let me know, because this is kind of coming from your thoughts, but I'm thinking to balance kind of what's most feasible and can get us through a meeting, because it's hard for us to get through that. If we are hosting it at different places quarterly, inviting said group, not only to be a part of the audience, but to have a place at the table with their designated.
I guess the only thing is I feel like anybody who bothers to come down to this meeting should have a place at the table. I mean, why would we say one person is invited but not somebody else? Or at least, I think that might be a little bit difficult to negotiate.
I mean, one person, that person being the one who scheduled it in?
Yeah, I mean, so we'd say, the one person who's arranged it can, I don't know, that gets odd to me, that we would say, okay, you can join us and then everybody else is over here. I'd rather just
What might
say,
be helpful about that is that the purpose of the meeting is for the HRC to do its business. It's not an open forum meeting. The public is invited to the meeting, and the public is invited to make comment. But this isn't a meeting
There may
with the
be
public.
events that we do in the community that would have that type of framework, but that's not what this meeting is.
This meeting is for
but
the
I
business
thought
space.
this meeting was also
Every one of our
to,
meetings has to be public.
right, but it's not just to conduct business. Part of our business is to hear from the public and be informed about issues that are related to human
Sure,
rights.
but that doesn't mean
So
they can be at
that's-
the table.
Right, that doesn't mean
But-
it's in
Okay, but why not?
Let me,
There's not enough
because
seats.
we're about
Glad you're
6
asking.
minutes beyond where we said we'd end. So let me recap what I heard. Shabri's suggestion was that we keep to 5:10 for now and be committed to that time so people know it, and we respect their showing up. And we also add closing remarks at the end. And then if there needs to be conversation beyond this, I think that's another thing we can talk about at the retreat, because we've got some good ideas running here. Can we all agree to move forward on that idea? Okay. So we're losing members. And the only last thing we had was immigration comment from
Right.
Diallo. Do you want to talk
Yes.
about that now, or do you want to talk about it Monday?
I can wait.
I mean,
The
next
next
month.
meeting, actually, the thing is, I just want to let you all know that I'm going to be working on this because there is nobody else working on it on the commission. And it's a massive issue that intersects with a lot of things. Large reason why people don't want immigration to happen is because then they'd be able to vote. And so it intersects with that, for example. I talked to Daniel about it, and he said that there has to be education on it, and so that's something that's a part of our goals, is part of our day goals, is to do education, and so I'm gonna be educating myself, and I think all of us should also be aware of it.
So when you say you're gonna work on it, what do you have in mind?
Well, first, educating myself. There are deferred action groups, or maybe it's not deferred action, I think that might be right, but like it's, and I have it all in my phone, actually.
So
But there's
are we-
limitations for people to be able to get.
Sorry to interrupt.
You're fine.
We gotta close, so in the interest of time, if you're interested in working on working on that with Diallo, before the next meeting, when I think you could
Right.
give us some more information, please get in touch with him.
Yeah.
Sounds good. I mean,
And what
Yeah,
about,
they work on, they
Please,
deal with.
please, your
yeah, I definitely wanna
minutes
work on
in
it.
advance,
So
and send
maybe
me
we can
your
figure out how.
corrections via email, so that at the meeting, you're just acknowledging that you're seeing those changes already in there.
Again, with the pre-reads, let's
Yeah,
be effective.
and then, I'm able to, then you're able to vote on them and say, we accept these notes. Because theoretically, you guys don't know if I actually change them, because we don't bring them back to the table again. So please read the minutes before you come, and send me an email that says, oh, can you change this, or can you, respell this person's name. I think think that's the function that we're trying to get to. So please encourage your colleagues to do the same.
Thank
No,
you.
that's good.
I adjourn this meeting. Thank you, guys, appreciate it. Sorry.
The next meeting is April 1st,
Oh, okay.
not an April Fool's joke.
Yeah, I'll go.
They said April 1st.
First Wednesday.
For real.